Welcome back, brothers, to Amalur. Tonight's story, we dive into a side incursion that happened between the Carcharodons and the Executioners during the Badab War. Before we get into the madness, be sure to like and comment any videos or topics you want to see in the future. Be sure to subscribe from the Emperor. I want to thank you guys for support. I've been killing it like usual. Now, let's get to the video.
The patrol cutter came down through the storm like a dying ember falling into a furnace. Corcyran Secundus did not welcome ships. Its upper atmosphere rasped at hulls with particulate ash, electrostatic filth and dust so fine that it bled through worn seals and gathered in the mouths of breathing men as a metallic paste. The cutter's void plating shuddered beneath the strain. Its prow lamps stabbed forward and found nothing but yellow-brown murk. The auspex arrays chattered, lied, corrected themselves, lied again, then filled the bridge with static that sounded almost like laughter. Lieutenant Severian Holt stood with one hand locked around the restraint rail and watched the world rise beneath him. He had seen dead planets before. He had walked through orbital docks after reactor breaches, watched men freeze in open void, and listened to astropathic choirs scream themselves blind beneath the pressure of enemy signals. Corcyran Secundus still made something cold move through his gut. It had no proper cities, no temples worth naming, no hives, no shrine processions, no forge stacks vomiting blessed industry into heaven. It was a dust world, a smuggler world, a forgotten wound on the edge of more important wars. Buried hangars slept beneath dunes of rust-colored grit. Dead Prometheum rigs leaned like broken gallows across the wastes. Old void routes crossed above it, half-charted and half-denied, used by pirates, traitors, oath-breakers, black market quartermasters, desperate imperial supply captains, and the kind of men who called treason business until a bolter found them. The cutter punched through a lower cloud bank, and the ground finally appeared. The smuggler base lay below them as a black scar in the desert, half swallowed by storm drift. It had once been hidden inside a canyon trench, its landing cradles and hab rings disguised beneath collapsible rockcrete roofs and false mineral returns. Now concealment meant nothing. The canyon walls were split. The landing fields were cratered. One buried hangar had been peeled open from end to end, exposing rows of scorched cargo haulers and ammunition pallets beneath a roof bent outward like ribs from a corpse. Holt heard the pilot whisper a prayer to the throne. No one mocked him. The cutter landed in a storm of grit and engine wash. Its ramp opened with a groan, admitting heat, dust, and the smell of old blood. Holt led the inspection detail down first. He wore a sealed navy void coat over carapace armor and carried a las pistol that suddenly felt like a child's toy. Around him came 12 armsmen with shot cannons, 2 auspex ratings, 3 servo skulls, and a red-robed engineer whose brass rebreather clicked softly as he muttered Binharik pleas to every offended machine spirit within range. The first step onto Corcyra's soil sank Holt's boot into ash and pulverized bone. He looked down. The storm had buried much of it, but not enough. A human hand protruded from the dust, flattened almost perfectly, fingers spread as if the dead man had tried to claw his way out of the world. There was no arm attached to it, only the hand, pressed into the ground by something too heavy to imagine. "Mark the remains," Holt said. One of the armsmen leaned closer, then recoiled. "Sir, there are more." The wind shifted. The dust thinned. The ground before the hangar entrance was paved with men, not bodies, not properly. Bodies had shape. These were remains impressed into the rockcrete, crushed beneath armored feet until ribs, skulls, weapons, ration tins, teeth, flak plates and soft organs became one red-grey layer. Smugglers, Holt thought. Base workers, gunmen, slaves, men who had lived in the dark, run guns through dead roots, cheated tithes, and sold death by the crate. They had not been executed. They had been walked over. Holt swallowed and tasted iron through his rebreather. "Servo skulls forward," he ordered. The skulls drifted ahead on whispering suspensors, their tiny optics glowing green in the dust. Their picked feeds blinked across Holt's wrist slate. The images jittered as the machine spirits passed through the hangar breach. Dead lumen strips, spent shell casings, walls punched through by mass reactive fire, ropes of black cable hanging like entrails from ceiling wounds. A cargo lifter overturned and caved inward, its operator still inside, reduced to wet fragments inside the cracked control cage. Then the first giant appeared in the picked feed. "Hold," Holt said. The whole inspection line froze. The corpse rested against a broken blast door. It wore gunmetal war plate, dark beneath ash and clotted gore, with yellow markings almost obliterated by dust. The armor was imperial, Adeptus Astartes. There was no mistaking the scale of it, the sacred brutality of ceramite fashioned around transhuman flesh. But the heraldry was not one Holt had served beside. A skull device, executioner markings, savage, old, severe. The helm was missing. The head beneath had been split from crown to jaw, not cut cleanly, split, crushed, ruined by a chain axe or some heavy-powered blade that had chewed through skull and face with such force that fragments of bone had embedded in the gorget. The dead warrior's mouth hung open around teeth broken to the gums. Darkened brain matter had dried down the front of his breastplate. One eye remained, collapsed in its socket. The other had been torn away with half the brow. His hands were still locked around another warrior's throat. Holt moved closer despite himself. The executioner's fingers had punched into the broken gorget of a grey armored Astartes lying beneath him. Even in death, the gauntlets had not opened. Even with his skull divided, the executioner had kept hold. "He died on his feet," murmured one of the armsmen. Holt looked at the wall behind the corpse. The rockcrete had cracked outward from impact. Blood had sprayed high enough to mark the ceiling. The executioner had not fallen when his head was split. Something had driven him backward into the wall hard enough to break the wall before death finished its claim. "Do not touch him," Holt said. No one needed the warning. They found the second giant in the adjoining firing gallery. He was Carcharodon. Holt knew that before the heraldry fully resolved beneath the dust. Grey armor, white shark tooth markings, old pattern plate, layered and brutal, its surfaces scratched with rites that looked less painted than scarred into the ceramite. His helm had been torn away. The face beneath was pale as drowned flesh, marked by black eyes filmed with grit. His features were calm in death, too calm, as if the ruin of his body had been an inconvenience rather than an ending. He had no lower half. From the waist down there was only shredded armor, ropey organ meat, severed reinforcement cables, and dark stains baked into the floor. A heavy bolter rested before him on a fixed mount, its barrel split from overheating, its ammunition feed empty. Both his hands remained fused to the grips by dried gore. One gauntlet had lost 3 fingers. The remaining fingers had locked so tightly that the engine seer whispered a Binharic curse at the strength of the final contraction. Holt stared at the ammunition belt. Spent. All of it. The wall opposite the firing gallery was cratered with bolt impacts. Several executioners had died in the kill lane beyond, their armor punched open, their bodies blown apart by explosive shells. One had lost his head entirely. Another's torso had burst from within, blackened ribs splayed outward across the interior of his breastplate. The Carcharodon had been cut in half, and he had kept firing. An Auspex rating made a thin sound behind his mask. Holt turned on him. "Control yourself." The man nodded too quickly. "Yes, Lieutenant. By the throne, yes." By the throne, Holt thought, and felt the words curdle inside him. The throne was very far away. Terror was a myth behind the stars. Here there was only dust, dead gods and men trying not to tremble before them. They advanced deeper. Every corridor confirmed the same impossible truth. The base had not simply been attacked. It had been used as a weapon by those inside it. Blast doors were bent outward from impacts. Rockcrete corridors were split by chain blade strikes deep enough to expose rebar. Bulkheads had been caved in by bodies driven through them. A plasteel support column bore the imprint of an Astartes helm, faceplate first, sunk into the metal like wax. Beneath it lay teeth, lens fragments, and a smear of black-red matter that no one named. The servo skulls moved ahead through a narrow passage and sent back images of a chamber choked with human dead. Smugglers had tried to barricade themselves inside. They had stacked crates, engine blocks, devotional icons stolen from some chapel ship, anything they could lift. It had not mattered. The barricade had been flattened. The men behind it had been flattened with it. Some had been burst apart by bolt shells. Others had been cut down by chain blades. Most had simply been crushed under ceramite boots, their skulls opened, their intestines squeezed from their bodies and dragged in slick trails across the floor. They were not targets, Holt understood. They were terrain. When 2 chapters of the Adeptus Astartes made war, ordinary men were not witnesses. They were not citizens. They were not collateral in the way fleet officers used the word in sealed reports. They were obstacles, cover, blood slick, warning signs, stains beneath the stride of the Emperor's angels. A servo skull drifted into the base's inner transit throat and died. Its feed burst white, then black. The engine sear twitched. Machine spirit extinguished. Cause unknown. A heartbeat later, the second skull fed them an image of a wall covered in words, cut through paint, metal, and dried blood. Not words, marks, tallies. Holt could not read them. He did not want to. 72 hours earlier, the void above Corcyran Secundus tore open in silence. There was no noble flare of translation horns, no broad declaration of imperial presence, no challenge shouted across the system on full-band Vox. The strike cruiser came out of the immaterium blackened, ancient and cold, its hull scarred by wars fought beyond charted light. Its prow was blunt and predatory. Its armor plates drank the thin sunlight. Weapon ports remained shuttered. Its engine wake was a ghost burn, controlled and minimal, the signature of a hunter that had learned long ago that noise was a mercy granted to prey. It broadcast only once. The signal was valid, imperial, archaic enough that several of Corcyra's hidden auspex nets failed to recognize it before their machine spirits were murdered by counter-intrusion. Then the cruiser went silent again. Within its hangar decks, drop pods hung in launch cradles like iron teeth set in the jaw of some deep-sea thing. Chapter serfs moved among them barefoot, heads shaved, eyes lowered. They checked restraint locks, fuel lines, weapon feeds, impact blessings. They spoke in whispers, or not at all. Silence was law here. Silence was older than command. It clung to the vessel's walls, pooled in the corners, and seemed to listen. Reaper brother Coromar stood before the open maw of his drop pod, while his armor slaves sealed the last locks of his warplate. The armor was grey and old, built from patterns that had seen centuries of blood. Its surface carried pale kill marks, tooth glyphs, and lines of ash scrimshaw worked into the ceramite by his own hand. Across one vambrace were etched the names of worlds that no longer answered imperial charts. Across the other were the names of brothers whose gene seed had been reclaimed from battlefields without dawn. His helm rested in the hands of a kneeling serf. The man's wrists shook, though he tried to hide it. Coromar looked down at him with black eyes. "Stillness," the Carcharodon said. The serf obeyed. His trembling ceased through force of terror. A chime sounded inside the hangar. Low, final. Company Master Akamu stood upon the command gantry above the pod line, a giant in pale grey plate, unmoving beneath the hanging chains of the launch shrine. His voice came through the Vox without thunder, without passion, without any of the fire that lesser warriors mistook for zeal. Corcyran Secundus shelters traitor routes. Secessionist munitions move beneath its dust. Stolen codes, stolen guns, possible gene seed traffic. The base below has traded with oathbreakers and carrion captains. It is marked. No warrior answered. Akamu continued. Descend, seize all data cores, break resistance, harvest what must be preserved, leave nothing useful behind, no warning, no negotiation, no survivors bearing arms, no witness with knowledge of our passage. Koromar took his helm from the surf. The man bent lower until his forehead touched the deck. By your will, Koromar said. The words were repeated along the pod line, low and cold, each brother speaking as if reciting a death already decided. By your will, by your will, by your will. Brother Tain carved one last line of ash into his breastplate with a ritual blade, drawing it through old pigment until pale dust gathered beneath the edge. Brother Yokua checked the feed of his bolter and kissed the weapon's casing once, not from sentiment, but right. Brother Manumata stood in complete stillness, head bowed, whispering in the old tongue to the machine spirit of his chain blade. Koromar sealed his helm. The world narrowed to helm sight, breath rasp, armor pressure, reactor hum, target runes, and the slow beat of 2 hearts. For Rangu, whispered Tain over the squad link. For the Void Father, answered Iokua. Koromar stepped into his pod and locked his gauntlets to the restraint grips. Begin the red work, he said. The launch klaxons did not scream. On that ship, even alarms were restrained, muted into grave tones that vibrated through bone. The pod clamps released. Gravity shifted. The machine spirit beneath Koromar woke with a shudder of hunger. Then the strike cruiser fired its teeth into the world. The drop pods fell through Corcyra's storm in a scattered spearhead, their hulls burning black and red. Dust clouds swallowed them. Lightning crawled across their plating. Below, the smuggler base registered meteor impacts only seconds before the truth struck home. The first pod hit the outer hab ring and erased a watchpost, 6 gunmen, and the roof beneath them. Shockwaves burst bodies inside flak armor, turned organs to slurry, and smashed men from their feet with blood spraying from their masks. The second pod punched through a landing cradle and crushed a fuel hauler flat, igniting promethium that rolled outward in a greasy orange bloom. The third embedded itself in the armory yard, scattering crates, limbs, and ammunition drums in a storm of metal and meat. Koromar's pod struck the eastern transit spine. For a moment, there was only impact, a god's fist around the body. Restraints bit, armor joints locked. The world roared. Then the pod petals blew open. Bolters fired before the ramps finished falling. Koromar stepped through smoke and flame, his first burst taking 3 men across the barricade ahead. Mass reactive shells punched through chest plates and detonated inside human torsos, bursting backs open in wet sprays. A 4th man turned to flee. Brother Tain shot him through the spine, and the man folded backward around the wound before the shell blew his abdomen across the wall. The smugglers had guns, stubbers, laslocks, stolen naval shot cannons, even a heavy autocannon mounted behind scrap plating. They fired in panic, then in desperation. Rounds sparked from grey ceramite. Las beams flashed and died against old armor. One shot punched into Brother Iokua's pauldron and made him turn his helm slightly, as if acknowledging a distant sound. The Carcharodons advanced. They did not run. They did not shout. They came through the smoke with bolters leveled, firing in disciplined bursts, each shell a judgment. Koromar placed shots into weapon crews, officers, Vox men, anyone reaching for alarm panels. Tain moved left and cut through a side door with his chain blade, the teeth shrieking only when they met metal and flesh. Manumata breached a barricade by walking through it, scattering crates and men, then stamping down on a wounded gunner's chest, hard enough to collapse the ribcage into a red bowl. The hab ring became a slaughterhouse in less than a minute. A smuggler captain tried to surrender from behind an overturned crawler. He threw down his pistol and raised both hands. Koromar shot him through the throat. The shell detonated in the spine and threw the headless body into 2 men behind him. No witness with command knowledge, Coromar voxed. Marked, said Tain. They moved inward. Behind them, more pods opened. More grey warriors entered the base. Outer guns fell silent one by one. The storm swallowed the screams that escaped into the canyon. Within the smuggler complex, alarm sirens began to wail until Carcharodon kill teams found the siren shrines and silenced them with blades, bolts, and hands. In the inner levels, chained to a brass-backed chair beneath a cage of psychic baffles, the captured astropath heard the killing before he saw it. He was an old man, starved thin, his eyes long ago burned white by service and misuse. The smugglers had kept him alive to read stolen signals and whisper warnings of patrol routes. They had cut prayers into his skin as mockery. They had fed him sedatives and pain. Now he heard the void come walking. His mind brushed the storm above, searching for escape, and found another presence descending through it. Not the cold silence of the grey. Hunters. Something harder, hotter. A blade oath wrapped in wrath. Iron souls behind gunmetal plate. Headsman spirits. Executioners. Blood burst from the astropath's nose. His jaw clenched until teeth cracked. The baffles around him sparked and died. A nearby smuggler shouted for him to speak, then died as a Carcharodon bolt shell came through the chamber door and opened him from hip to shoulder. Coromar entered through the smoke. The astropath turned his ruined eyes toward the grey giant and screamed hard enough to tear his own throat raw. Another axe falls, the old man rasped. Another brotherhood comes. Not prey, not men. Angels with headsman hands. Coromar raised his bolter. The astropath's skull split from within before the shot was fired. Blood and grey matter sprayed across the restraints, and his body convulsed against the chair as the last signal burned through him. Brother Tain's auspex clicked across the squad link. Static, mineral ghosting, storm interference. Then one identifier resolved through the murk, ancient and hostile, inbound through the dust. Executioners. The night hag moved through the outer dark, with all running lights dead and every gun shrine awake. She was an ugly ship by any measure sane men used. Her hull was black iron, scarred by lance burns, patched with plates taken from broken enemies and blessed with the names of the dead. Her prow had been remade over centuries into the image of a headsman's blade, a vast wedge of armored steel that had split convoy ships, patrol cutters, pirate barges, and loyalist escorts across more war zones than most imperial scribes would ever be permitted to know. Along her flanks, gun decks sat behind shuttered ports like execution pits, waiting for the condemned. Chains hung from the cathedral towers of her command spine, each one bearing oath plates, skulls, cracked helms, broken blades, and the blackened bones of warriors judged worthy of remembrance. Within her, silence did not reign. Silence was for assassins, void ghosts, and chapters that mistook absence for strength. The night hag breathed with iron anger. Her decks rang with the tread of armored boots. Her reliquary halls muttered with the voices of death speakers, recording names into memory vaults and bone-bound ledgers. Her armories growled beneath the hands of serfs and tech marines as chain axes were fed new teeth. Combat blades were honed, bolters were loaded with sanctified mass reactive shells, and power weapons were awakened from their magnetic sleep. In the ship's lower chapels, pillars of black stone bore axe marks cut by generations of executioners before battle. Some marks were shallow, some bit deep enough to crack the stone. All of them were names, if one knew how to read them. Axe brother Castigar knew how. He stood in the mustering chapel beneath the shadow of the largest pillar, his helm mag locked to his thigh, his face bare to the cold, recycled air. His skin was pale beneath old scar tissue. One cheek had been split years ago and healed badly, leaving his mouth with the faint suggestion of a permanent snarl. His scalp was shaven to the bone, marked by inked kill glyphs and old sutures. His eyes were steady. There was no frenzy in them, no froth, no twitching hunger. That was why his brothers had named him the Taker. Castigar did not kill as beasts killed. He did not swing until the red veil took him, nor howl away his reason beneath the roar of a chain blade. He believed killing was a ledger, a debt, a weight. Every life taken by his hand had to be witnessed, weighed and remembered, or else it was not execution. It was waste. His warplate hung from the arming frame behind him. Gunmetal ceramite, scored by boarding claws and blast scars. Yellow veteran markings crossed his right pauldron, almost hidden beneath engraved kill glyphs from close-quarter wars. A broken crimson line marked the breaching of the St. Drusus vow. 3 axe notches marked the heads taken on Signac's drift. A ring of black script around the gorget named the brothers whose deaths he had answered personally. The armor had been repainted many times. The scars always returned. A serf tightened the final restraint seal at Castigar's hip. The man's hands were slick with oil and fear. Castigar looked down at him. "Again," he said. The serf froze. "The seal is loose. Again." The serf obeyed with frantic care, fingers fumbling over the clasp. Castigar waited. His patience was worse than anger. When the seal finally locked, he nodded once. "Better. Fear makes your hands stupid. Make them useful." "Yes, Lord," the serf whispered. Castigar turned from him and took up his axe. It was not active yet. The blade's power field slept beneath a skin of dark metal, but even unlit it looked hungry. Its haft was wrapped in leather darkened by sweat, oils, and blood. The head was broad, brutal, made to cleave through armor and bone rather than impress parade grounds. It had no name. Castigar distrusted warriors who named weapons before those weapons had earned memory. Across the chapel, the squads gathered. Tactical brothers locked magazines into bolters and drew chain axes across their chests in salute. Assault veterans stood beneath jump packs that hissed and vented as artificers made final rites to the turbines. Breacher brothers tested shield locks with dull, thunderous impacts. Veterans checked combi weapons, melters, bolt pistols, blades, grenades, and the small, brutal tools needed when a boarding action became a murder in a corridor too narrow for honor. Above them all hung the chapter's dead, not all in body, most in symbol. Skulls taken from fallen brothers when recovery had permitted it. Oath chains worn by warriors who had died still standing. Scraps of armor with dried blood sealed beneath lacquer. Serrated teeth from old chain axes. The remnants of banners burned along their edges. To outsiders it might have seemed barbaric. To Castigar it was order. The dead watched. The living answered. Death Speaker Arkell entered without herald. The chapel changed when he came. Warriors ceased their weapon checks. Serfs lowered their eyes. Even the machine clatter seemed to soften beneath the pressure of his presence. Arkell wore blackened gunmetal armor marked with bone script and old execution oaths. His skull helm hung from one hand, its faceplate wrought in the severe likeness of a death mask. His crozius rested in the other. It was not shaped like the winged icons of gentler chaplains. It was an axe, heavy and cruel, its head edged with a disruptor field and inscribed with censure marks. The haft was wrapped in strips of cured skin covered in oath script, each strip taken from a condemned traitor, renegade champion or enemy warlord whose name had been judged worthy of carrying into future slaughters. He walked among the squads and spoke the dead aloud. Dorneth, slain beneath loyalist lance fire at Sagan's Reach. Helbron, burned within his plate while holding the breach at Cartho's gate. Vare, head taken by a minotaur in the red dark. Malco, crushed beneath a boarding ram and still firing until his bolter cooked dry. Routh, Sailor, Orman, Belisar. With each name, an executioner struck fist to chest. The sound rolled through the chapel like war drums. Arkell stopped before Castigar. "The Taker," the Death Speaker said. "Death Speaker, you have heard the charge." "I have." "Speak it." Castigar lifted his axe until the blade rested against his shoulder. Corcyran Secundus, Dust World, Smuggler hold fast, Interdiction data believed stolen from Loyalist fleet elements, captured munitions from both sides moving through the same throat. Compact of oathless merchants feeding the war and profiting from brother blood. Possible false routes seeded into our convoy paths. And our place in it? Castigar's jaw tightened. We answer old oath. We stand by the debt sworn in the maelstrom. We are not raiders. We are not pirates. We take what must be taken, burn what must be burned, and kill those who have earned the axe. Arkell nodded. Good. Remember it when lesser souls call you traitor. The Emperor does not judge through parchment law. He judges through strength, through endurance, through the hand that does not tremble when justice requires a blade. A younger battle brother gave a low laugh from the assault line. Then let the clerks on terror count parchment. We shall count heads. Several warriors answered with growls of approval. Arkell turned his skull-bare gaze upon them. Do not mistake mirth for purpose. There is another sign in the dust. Grey armor, old codes, void killers. The chapel stilled again. Castigar's eyes narrowed. Carcharodons. So the augurs whisper, so the dead will confirm. One of the Breacher veterans spat onto the deck. Grey ghosts with loyalist. Writs. Void carrion, Arkell said, voice iron hard, with imperial writs. Killers from the black beyond the maps. They will not break from fear. They will not turn aside from pain. They will not answer reason if silence serves them better. Do not treat them as convoy men. Do not treat them as armsmen. Do not treat them as the soft-blooded scions who die with surprise in their throats. They are Adeptus Astartes. They are predators. They are our kind, twisted by the dark between stars. A pause followed. Then Castigar smiled, and there was no warmth in it. No prisoners who raise arms, he said. No mercy for oath-breakers. No fear for grey ghosts. Brother Garin, broad even by Astartes' measure, rolled his shoulders and laughed through a throat ruined by old acid burns. Then we shall take their heads and learn whether sharks bleed red. That drew more laughter, harsh, brief, honest. Arkell let it live for a heartbeat, then killed it with a single look. You will not hunt trophies before the debt is paid. You will not shame the dead by spending rage without aim. You will strike as executioners, heavy, close, certain. Castigar lifted his axe in salute. By the headsman's oath. The chapel answered as one. By the headsman's oath. The night hag came upon Corcyran Secundus like a sentence. She did not fall silent as the Carcharodon vessel had done. She announced herself through thrust, heat, and brutal certainty. Her engines burned hard through the dust-smeared void above the world. Her gun decks tracked the hidden desert base. Her launch bays opened with the scream of mag clamps and the howl of awakened thunderhawks. Castigar sat locked within the assault hold of the lead gunship, helm sealed now, axe mag locked across his lap. Around him, his brothers waited in red lumen gloom. Their armor made the hold seem too small. Bolt weapons rested muzzle down between greaves. Chains rattled softly with turbulence. Jump packs growled in their restraint harnesses. Somewhere behind the bulkhead, servitor loaders chanted ammunition counts in wet machine voices. The Thunderhawk fell hard. It did not glide into the storm. It punched into it. Dust slammed across the canopy. Warning runes blinked amber across Castigar's helm display. The pilot snarled corrections to the machine spirit. Flak fire began below, blind and inaccurate, then sharpened as the smugglers' western batteries found their courage. Shells burst around the formation. One impact hammered the hull and killed 3 mortal crewmen in the rear bay, reducing them to meat inside their restraints. No executioner looked back. "Western garrison in sight," came the pilot's voice. "Auto turrets awake. Infantry heat returns. Armor signatures light." "Put us among them," Castigar voxed. "As ordered, Axe Brother." The Thunderhawk dropped lower. Its heavy bolters opened first, stitching the outer walls with explosive fire. Men on the ramparts vanished in bursts of armor fragments and shredded flesh. A turret turned toward them. The gunship's Lascannon fired once, and the turret became a white flower of heat and flying metal. Then the assault ramp slammed down before the Thunderhawk had fully settled. Castigar was already moving. The world outside was yellow dust, red muzzle flash, and screaming alarm klaxons. The western garrison had formed a defensive line behind cargo haulers and stacked plasteel crates. They wore patched flak armor and carried stolen weapons, enough to butcher ordinary men by the score. Against the executioners, they were already dead and had not yet been told. Castigar's first bolt shell hit a gunner in the chest and detonated behind the man's ribs, blowing his spine out through the back of his coat. His second took a Vox operator through the face, collapsing head and handset into one red ruin. Then he stopped firing and ran. The distance mattered. Executioners did not spend themselves proving they could kill from afar. A bolter was a tool. An axe was judgment. The first smuggler he reached tried to raise a shotgun. Castigar broke the man's arm with his offhand, crushed the shotgun into the broken limb, then kicked him hard enough to cave his pelvis and throw him beneath Brother Garen's boots. Garen's chain axe came down twice, and the man ceased to be a shape. The line broke almost immediately. Executioners hit it like a siege ram given souls. Brother Prasad fired his bolt pistol point blank into a cluster of men sheltering behind an ammo crate, each shell detonating inside flesh before the crate itself cooked off and hurled burning bodies into the dust. Garen took a stubber burst across the chest, ignored the impacts, vaulted the barricade, and removed the gun crew's heads in 3 broad swings. Assault veterans descended from above on screaming jump packs, landing among fleeing men with such force that legs shattered, skulls burst, and bodies bounced broken from the rockcrete. Castigar saw a smuggler officer crawling away, with one leg missing, dragging himself by bloody elbows. The man wore a command sash and had a data slate chained to his wrist. Alive, Castigar voxed. Brother Prasad stepped on the officer's remaining leg to pin him. The man shrieked until Castigar crouched before him and placed a gauntlet over his mouth. "Your vault," Castigar said. "Speak." The officer tried to bite him. Admirable, in the way vermin sometimes showed spine when cornered. Castigar pressed harder, teeth cracked beneath his palm. "Speak." The officer sobbed wetly through blood and pointed toward the inner transit gates. Castigar rose. "He has answered." Prasad looked down. "Witnessed? Witnessed." The bolt pistol barked once. The officer's head burst against the ground. They pushed inward through the western gates. Resistance thickened and died. Auto turrets tracked through storm haze, only to be blinded by smoke grenades and cracked open by crack charges. A heavy weapon nest in an upper hab slit killed Brother Vaughan by punching 3 autocannon rounds through his helm and breastplate. Vaughan fell to one knee rather than backward, fired his bolter until the magazine emptied, then toppled forward with half his skull leaking into his gorget. Arkell reached the corpse as the advance rolled past. He placed one black gauntlet on the fallen warrior's shoulder. "Vaughan," he recorded, "slain at the western throat of Corcyran Secundus. Det witnessed." Then he moved on. Castigar did not need to be told what came next. Vaughan had a name in the ledger. Someone had to answer it. The heavy weapon nest died beneath a storm of jump pack flame and chain axes. Castigar arrived after the killing and found Garen standing amid what remained of the crew. The smugglers had been chopped apart in such close quarters that the walls dripped. One had been pinned to the weapon shield by his own spine, the chain axe strike having ripped it free and driven it backward through metal. Garen looked at Castigar. Vaughan answered, "Not yet." Garen nodded, then bent and took the gun captain's head with one final swing. "Now?" Castigar looked at the corpse. The captain had not fired the shell, but he had commanded the nest. It was sufficient. "Now." They found the first signs of the grey ghosts in the inner hab ring. The western corridors had been war. The eastern ones had been slaughter. Castigar stepped through a breached partition and halted. The smugglers here were dead before alarm had touched them. Sentries lay with single bolt wounds placed through throats, hearts, and brainstems. Some still had weapons slung. One sat upright against a wall, eyes open, the back of his head painted across a control panel. Another had died reaching for a warning rune that remained unpressed. Brother Prasad knelt beside a blast door. Its locking shrine had been opened from the inside without damage. Not forced, not burned. Opened. "Clean," Prasad said. "Too clean," Castigar answered. Garin nudged a corpse with his boot. These did not see death. "No," Castigar said. "Death saw them." He followed the signs. Bolt placement, controlled breach patterns, disabled alarms, dead Vox men, no wasted movement, no rage spent on bodies after the kill, no trophies, no challenge marks. The Carcharodons had passed through like a blade under black water. A predator had entered the same killing ground. The thought did not anger him. It sharpened him. Arkell joined them at the corridor junction, Crozius' axe resting against one shoulder. His helm was sealed now, the skull face blackened by smoke, its eye lenses burning a dull red. "You have seen it," the Death Speaker said. "Yes." "Name it." "Discipline without witness. Murder without declaration. They erase, not execute." "Good." Arkell looked down the corridor, where the dust swallowed lumen light. "Do not hate them for it. Hate is too generous before the debt is clear. Understand them. They are not weak. They are not confused. They are loyal in the manner of knives left too long in the dark." Garin chuckled. "Pretty words for carrion." "Carrion that kills space marines," Arkell said. That silenced him. The executioners moved on, and the base changed around them. To the west, alarms still wailed and men still died loudly. To the east, systems were already dark, crews already butchered, doors already opened. Two wars were advancing through the same body, one like an axe through bone, the other like a shark through black water. They reached the central vault approaches from the western artery, just as the Auspex began to scream falsehoods. Castigar's display filled with overlapping returns, human life signs, dead zones, Astartes mass readings, machine shrines, signal ghosts, fleet route codes cycling across frequencies they had no right to touch. Somewhere beyond the sealed doors ahead, a cogitator engine was broadcasting into the storm, whispering convoy paths and interdiction markers to every receiver hungry enough to listen. Prasad stared at the runes. "That is no munitions cache." "No," Castigar said. "That is a shrine." "A trap?" Castigar looked at the eastern approach on his helm map. Grey returns moved there, slow, controlled, coming closer. "Worse," he said. "A summons." The vault doors were enormous, layered adamantium and plasteel, marked with smuggler seals over older imperial warding script. From the other side of the chamber, through dust and flickering lumen strips, grey armor emerged into sight. Carcharodons. They came without haste, bolters raised, helms expressionless, shark tooth markings pale beneath blood and ash. The executioners spread into a killing line. Bolters lifted, axes loosened, shields locked forward. Jump packs growled hungry and low. For a moment, neither side fired. Castigar stared across the vault chamber at the foremost grey warrior. Black eye lenses regarded him without fear, without challenge, without any human heat at all. Arkell's voice entered the squad link, calm as a funeral bell. "Brothers, the debt has found teeth." Castigar tightened his grip on his axe. Across the chamber, the cogitator shrine kept broadcasting false routes into the storm, singing its lies to both armies in the dark. Someone, somewhere, had wanted the headsman and the void shark to meet. Now the meeting had come. The maintenance tunnels beneath the smuggler base were not built for gods. They had been bored through rockcrete and old basalt by men with cheap tools, weaker backs, and poorer prayers. Their ceilings were low, their walls furred with dust, their pipework sweating chemical runoff from the habrings above. Cable bundles sagged in black loops from rusted brackets. Lumen strips flickered in long chains, each glow weak and jaundiced, each failure birthing pockets of perfect dark. Air moved poorly here. It dragged itself through filters clogged with ash, promethium stink, and the sour animal reek of too many men hiding beneath a dying world. Coromar moved through it without sound. His warplate should have been too large for the passage. It should have scraped the walls, battered the pipes, announced him with the growl of fiber bundles and the grinding complaint of ancient ceramite. Instead, he advanced with the slow economy of a void predator moving through a wrecked hull, shoulders turning before the walls could touch him, knees bending beneath dangling conduit, bolter held close to his chest in the shipboard stance taught by brothers who had hunted in places where every careless motion killed. His armor was not uniform. Few suits among the Carcharodons ever were. His left greave was old Mark III, heavy, banded, pitted from centuries of boarding actions. His right vambrace was Mark V, studded and scarred, repaired so often that its machine spirit muttered in static when the pain of battle grew near. His breastplate was a relic plate of uncertain pattern, its aquila long removed, its surface etched with tooth glyphs, ash lines and kill scars cut deep enough to outlive repainting. One pauldron had been taken from a dead brother on a nameless moon beyond the pale of imperial cartography. The other had been hammered back into shape after an orc chain cleaver had nearly split it through. This was not poverty. It was survival made sacred. Ahead of him, Brother Tain raised 2 fingers, then closed them into a fist. Stillness. Heat ahead. Not human alone. Coromar answered with a slight tilt of his bolter, the old Void Hunter sign for acknowledgement. No words crossed the squad link. Words had mass. Words carried weakness. In the tunnels beneath Corcyran Secundus, the Carcharodons spoke in gesture, Auspex ghosts, and the disciplined patience of killers who knew that silence was a blade. His helm display bled into prey sight. The world cooled into drowned blue and iron black. Heat signatures flowered beyond the tunnel wall, some small and shaking, others massive, steady, moving in purposeful groups. Executioners. He could feel them even without the autosenses. Their advance trembled through the floor, not in panic, not in disorder, but in a steady rhythm of ceramite boots, shield braces, and marching violence. They did not hurry. They did not hesitate. They closed. Coromar listened to stolen Vox fragments, captured through the base's dying systems. Harsh voices, short commands, armor codes, kill confirmations. A brother named Vaughn recorded as dead. A debt witnessed. A debt answered. The executioners did not speak like panicked renegades or oathless corsairs. They spoke like warriors who believed the universe itself owed them skulls and explanations. A tremor rolled through the pipework as something heavy detonated above. Brother Iokwa glanced back. Coromar did not move. "They are not prey," he said at last, his voice low across the squad channel, almost swallowed by static. "They are another hunger." The words settled among them like a verdict. Tain's answer was a scrape of gauntlet across chainblade casing. Ready. Coromar reached the first junction and touched 2 runes on the maintenance panel. The panel belonged to the base, and the base's machine spirits were frightened things, corrupted by smugglers, ill-tended, starved of right. They resisted him for 3 heartbeats. Then, the Carcharodon's data spike pierced the port beneath the casing and forced obedience. The lumen grid died section by section. Above, in the western corridors, human men began to scream. Darkness struck the base in broken waves. First, the hab rings, then the transit throat, then the generator nave's outer galleries. Smugglers who had survived the first assaults found themselves blind. Some fired wildly, some prayed, some ran into sealed doors and broke fingers against plasteel. The Carcharodons had already sabotaged the ventilation seals. When Coromar gave the next command, dust from the storm outside vented into the inner corridors in choking clouds, dragged through pressure ducts and maintenance shafts until the base breathed desert into its own lungs. Men clawed at their masks. Men tore filters away and died faster for it. Their eyes filled with grit. Their mouths became mud. Their throats closed around ash. The executioners did not stop. Their helm filters engaged. Their auto-senses compensated. Their formation tightened. Their shields moved forward. Their bolters dipped for close work. Through the dust and dark, Coromar watched their heat ghosts advance like iron hearts in a storm. Good, he thought. The first trap cut off their rear guard. Brother Manumata collapsed a side passage with shaped charges placed in the old rockcrete seams. The tunnel folded inward with a roar, burying smugglers and separating 3 executioners from the main thrust. The blast hurled human bodies down the corridor as broken red shapes. One struck an executioner's shield and slid off in pieces. The warrior did not look down. Coromar signaled. The Carcharodons attacked from above. In the generator nave, the ceiling vanished into a forest of ducts, chain hoists, and pressure pipes. The chamber itself was vast by the base's miserable standards, built around 3 plasma-crowned engines that throbbed behind reinforced cages. Heat shimmered. Red emergency lumens pulsed in the dust. The floor was slick with coolant, blood, and the shredded remains of men who had been caught between 2 immortal assaults. Brother Tain dropped first. He fell from overhead pipework onto the rearmost executioner and drove his chain blade down into the warrior's backpack reactor. The teeth screamed. Ceramite split. The reactor casing burst sparks and blue-white flame. A lesser foe would have died at once, folded, beneath the ambush, finished before understanding the blow. The executioner did not fall. He reached back with one arm, fingers finding Tain's helm crest, and pulled. Tain's blade chewed deeper. The executioner's reactor spat flame across both warriors. Warning runes flickered across Coromar's display as he moved. The executioner dragged Tain over his shoulder by brute strength and slammed his own helm forward. The first headbutt cracked Tain's faceplate. The second broke the left eye lens. The third drove both warriors sideways into a generator column, hard enough to dent the metal casing. Then the chamber erupted. Bolters were too close to become instruments of clean killing. Muzzles struck armor before firing. Shells detonated inside joints and under pauldrons, blasting limbs into twitching meat. Combat blades slid into armor seals, scraping ribs, puncturing secondary hearts, breaking against black carapace. Ceramite fists hammered helm lenses into faces. Chain-axe teeth shrieked against breastplates. Power fields flashed and cooked blood to black steam. Coromar fired once into the throat seal of an executioner turning toward him. The shell punched in and burst behind the gorget, spraying meat through the broken collar. The warrior staggered, but remained upright, blood pumping down the inside of his plate. Coromar stepped inside the reach of the dying warrior's axe, locked his left hand around the weapon haft, and drove his combat blade twice beneath the ribs, once through the lower seal, once higher, searching for the hearts. The executioner smashed a fist into Coromar's helm, with enough force to flood his vision with white static. Coromar did not step back. He twisted the blade. The executioner died trying to bite him through a broken faceplate. Brother Iokua was dragged down beneath another gunmetal giant. The two of them smashed through a railing and crashed onto the lower gantry. Iokua lost his bolter. The executioner lost an eye lens. They fought with knives, knees, and gauntlets, each blow wet with damage. Iokua drove his thumb through the cracked lens into the warrior's eye socket. The executioner answered by burying a combat blade through Iokua's side and twisting it until the Carcharodon's armor flooded with pressure warnings. Neither cried out. Their bodies did the speaking. Across the nave, the isolated executioners became a knot of iron fury. One had lost most of his right arm to a melter cut, yet still swung his chain-axe left-handed. Another's helm was split across the mouth grill, exposing teeth blackened with blood. He laughed once, not loudly, but with genuine contempt. and crushed Brother Manumata's knee with a kick before Manumata tore open his abdomen with a serrated blade. Then Castigar entered the chamber. Coromar knew him immediately, not by name. Names belonged to records. Threat belonged to instinct. The executioner came through the dust with a power axe in both hands, armor scarred, yellow veteran markings dark beneath ash and blood. He moved without wasted violence, not frenzied, not blind. He crossed the kill zone under fire, took a bolt shell against his pauldron, another against his thigh, and used both impacts as if the enemy had merely announced his arrival. A Carcharodon turned to meet him. Castigar's axe came up in a low arc and struck the warrior's chest. The power field flared. The blade did not simply cut. It overloaded the breastplate, blew out the seals, and filled the armor cavity with white heat. The organs beneath cooked in the instant before the ceramite split. The Carcharodon hit the generator column behind him, still trying to raise his chain blade. Castigar pinned him there with the axe head buried deep in the chest. The Carcharodon's left hand clawed at Castigar's helm. His right drew a knife and drove it into the executioner's shoulder seal. Castigar did not release the axe. He leaned forward until helm touched helm and watched the life leave the grey warrior. Only when the Carcharodon stopped moving did Castigar wrench the axe free. Then, with deliberate force, he took the head. Coromar saw all of it through drifting dust and failing lumen glow. Threat identified, priority marked. Not hatred. Hatred was excess. Hatred was heat, and heat distorted aim. Castigar was simply an obstruction with will, skill, and endurance sufficient to imperil mission completion. Therefore, Castigar had to be ended. Coromar... Blink clicked the mark into his helm display. The executioner's outline gained a pale kill rune. The generator nave trembled as the base's lower transit systems awakened in confusion. Somewhere beyond the chamber, the smugglers made their last attempt to flee. The magrail tunnel beneath the base had been built for moving contraband from buried hangars to distant canyon mouths. It was narrow, dirty, and crowded with freight carts loaded with ammunition crates, ration barrels, stolen naval stores, and men desperate enough to believe distance could save them from the angels of death. They came in hundreds: smugglers, crewmen, gun hands, bonded laborers, half-armed, bleeding, blinded by dust. Some pushed carts, some carried sacks of coin or weapons or prayer icons. Some carried wounded brothers who begged to be left behind when the first bolter impacts sounded from the tunnel mouth. Both chapters entered the magrail passage from opposing sides. For a few seconds, the humans were merely between them. Then they became the corridor. A bolt shell fired by an executioner struck a fleeing man in the back and burst him open, spraying the 3 men ahead of him with bone fragments and liquefied organs. A Carcharodon round punched through a cart of ammunition and detonated its contents, turning a knot of smugglers into a storm of flame, limbs, and screaming torsos. Ricochets shrieked through the tunnel. Men dropped in pieces. Others were crushed beneath ceramite boots as the Astartes advanced through them without slowing. A smuggler with a plasma pistol fired upward at Brother Tain and burned a scar across the Carcharodon's chest plate. Tain looked down, seized the man by the skull, and drove him face first into the tunnel wall. The head burst. The body spasmed once and slid underfoot. An executioner breacher used a fleeing crowd as cover, not by hiding behind them, but by walking through them, shield forward. Men struck the shield and died from impact alone. When a Carcharodon fired, shells passed through bodies before detonating against the breacher's shield face, coating the metal in cooked flesh. The magrail line became a slaughter trench. Human voices vanished beneath the louder truth of Astartes' war. Bolters roared. Chain blades howled. Armor crashed against armor. Blood ran along the rail groove in a thick channel, carrying teeth, fingers, bolt casings, and scraps of cloth toward the lower drainage sumps. Coromar crossed the tunnel through the dying press and reached a maintenance hatch on the far side. Castigar saw him. For the first time, their helms turned fully toward one another across the massacre. A human man, perhaps a smuggler clerk, perhaps nothing at all, stumbled between them with both hands raised. Castigar ignored him until he blocked the line. Coromar ignored him until he reached for Coromar's armor. The man died from both directions, one bolt shell from each side striking him almost at the same heartbeat. He ceased to exist as a man and became a red burst between grey and gunmetal. Neither warrior acknowledged it. The battle pulled them apart before they could close. More executioners advanced. More Carcharodons fell back into the prepared dark. Coromar allowed the withdrawal. Predators did not spend themselves because the throat was in reach. The throat would still be there when the prey tired. In the central smuggler vault, the truth waited behind adamantium locks. Its doors opened only after 3 separate breaches, 2 deaths, and 1 machine spirit scourging, performed by a Carcharodon tech marine whose name Coromar did not know. Inside was not wealth in any form a mortal pirate would have understood. No mountains of coin, no jewel crates, no Xenos idols glimmering in hidden cases. There were data stacks. Rows of cogitator shrines lined the chamber, their brass faces lit by green witch glow. Spools of encrypted parchment fed through reader mouths. Vox crystals pulsed in rune-locked cages. Map slates projected convoy paths across the dust-heavy air. Minefield codes, loyalist interdiction schedules, secessionist supply routes, captured munition manifests, rumors of gene seed movements wrapped in cipher, false orders bearing stolen seals, ghost signals seeded into fleet channels, enough to compromise war fronts, enough to burn ships that had not yet translated, enough to send brothers into ambush, starve loyal worlds, feed renegade holds, and turn the Badab wars. Already poisoned blood darker still. Coromar understood at once. The executioners could not leave with this. Across the vault, Castigar and Arkul saw the same truth through different rites. The Carcharodons could not leave with it. The cogitator shrine gave a shriek of machine pain. Beneath the vault floor, something old woke in obedience to protocols written before the smugglers had ever squatted in the dust above it. Not demon, not Xenos, not madness from the warp. Something worse in its own way. An imperial defense system, blind, loyal, obsolete, and armed. Panels opened in the walls, sarcophagus racks unlocked, murder servitors unfolded from rusted alcoves, their flesh long dead, their machine parts still eager. Gun thralls rose on tracked lower bodies, heavy stubbers and rotary cannons grafted where arms had once been. Red targeting lenses blinked awake by the dozen. A dead Vox caster crackled through the vault, its voice ancient and broken. Unauthorized presence, asset denial protocol engaged. Purge all intruders. Preserve the shrine. The first rotary cannon spun up. Carcharodons and executioners both turned as one. The base had joined the killing. The base sealed itself like a corpse clenching its jaw. The first signs were not alarms, but impacts. Deep metallic blows rolled through the foundations as adamantium shutters dropped over transit mouths, observation slits, loading wells, and broken hangar throats. Blast doors that had hung half open since the first assault slammed shut with enough force to shake dust from the ceiling. Locking teeth bit into stone. Emergency runes bled red along the walls, some flickering in low Gothic, some in older Binharic warning cant, some in scripts neither smuggler nor warrior had used for centuries. Then the lower vault shields woke. They did not rise cleanly. They stuttered through the chamber floors in pale distortion fields, whining with neglected power, catching falling dust and shredded parchment in their glow. A wounded smuggler stumbled into one and came apart from the waist down, his upper body striking the floor with both hands, clawing at nothing, while his legs fell on the other side in separate pieces. No one moved to help him. There was no one left who could. A voice spoke from the walls, old and broken. Asset denial protocol engaged, internal sanctity compromised, purge all intruders, preserve the shrine. The first defense laser fired before the final word died. A red line carved through the western corridor at waist height. It cut through men as a thought cuts through prayer. Smugglers running in a panicked herd simply became halves. Torsos slid from hips. Intestines uncoiled across the floor. Men fell screaming on their own opened bodies, hands trying to hold in what the machine had released. The beam struck an executioner breacher's storm shield and broke across it in a flare of white heat. The warrior leaned into the light, boots grinding through blood, shield face glowing, while his brothers advanced behind him. "Forward!" Castigar voxed. The shield wall obeyed. Another beam snapped from a ceiling shrine and struck Brother Garin across the pauldron. Ceramite blackened. Warning runes flared across his armor. He did not slow. He lifted his bolt pistol around the rim of the shield before him and fired 3 times. The first shell burst a gun thrall's skull housing. The second tore away a targeting lens. The third detonated inside its ammunition feed and threw machine limbs across the corridor in a clatter of brass and meat. The executioners pushed on. Beyond the vault chamber, the Carcharodons had already vanished. Koromar felt the base closing around them through his boots and the pressure shift in his armor seals. The smuggler hold fast was no longer merely structure. It had become hostile environment, enemy vessel, tomb. That changed the pattern of war, but not its purpose. A sealed base was a ship hulk, without stars beyond the walls. Ship hulks could be mapped, entered, gutted, and left dead. He raised his fist. The kill team halted in total darkness. Brother Tain knelt beside a pressure door and set a breaching charge in silence. Brother Iokua fed a data spike into a corroded access shrine and forced the machine spirit to disgorge a partial route map before it died shrieking into static. Brother Manumata placed Auspex pings through the deck, listening for void gaps, power conduits, shield nodes, and the heavy tread of the gunmetal warriors, hunting them from the west. Koromar studied the map fragments as they appeared on his helm display. The base had become a labyrinth of sealed compartments. Direct routes closed. Ventilation arteries remained. Maintenance crawlways, fuel ducts, old smuggler tunnels cut through older stone. Weak points gleamed in pale runes, where controlled demolition would collapse a pursuit path or open a new throat. The executioners would smash. The Carcharodons would cut. "Path black," Tain signed. Koromar answered with the old void cant gesture. "Bleed them." The charge detonated without flourish. The door buckled inward, not fully destroyed, but wounded enough for Manumata to wedge both gauntlets into the gap and tear it open by force. No battle cry followed. Grey warriors flowed through the breach into another lightless passage, leaving only dead lumen strips and severed cables behind them. The executioners found the same obstruction from the opposite character of war. They formed axe wedges where corridors narrowed, shield knots where defense lasers crossed, and killing files where murder servitors poured from hidden alcoves. They did not try to become shadows. They became a moving impact. A gun thrall rolled from a wall bay on tracked limbs, rotary cannon whining. Brother Prasad took the first burst on his breacher shield, sparks and shattered metal spraying back over his helm. Brother Kyle stepped around him with a combi melter and fired. The thrall's torso became a sun-bright hole. Castigar came through the smoke, axe low, and split the machine's remaining flesh from collar to engine block. "Left throat," Prasad voxed. "Blocked." "Then break it." The executioners broke it. Cracked charges went onto the sealed blast door. Shields locked. The blast rolled over them, filling the corridor with smoke, pressure, and fragments. Before the door finished falling, they were through it. Bolt pistols fired at arm's reach. Chain axes bit. A murder servitor lunged with drill arms and seized Brother Kyle by the torso. The drills punched through his plate and began chewing into the flesh beneath. Kyle fired his bolt pistol beneath the servitor's chin until its head detonated. The drill arms kept spinning after death, grinding red tunnels through his body. Castigar tore the arms free one by one. Kyle sagged, still alive, both hearts hammering against the ruin inside his armor. "Name?" Arkle asked over the Vox as he stepped past. "Kyle," the wounded warrior said. "Not yet," Arkle replied. "Stand." Kyle stood. Death Speaker Arkle fought with his helm recording. He did not mourn the fallen. Mourning belonged after battle, if battle left anyone with breath enough for useless indulgence. He chronicled. Every brother lost became a word cut into the dark. Every death became a debt. His skull helm drank picked feeds, Vox bursts, biometric failures and last positions, binding them into memory. When Brother Othran took a defense laser through the neck seal and his head rolled smoking from his shoulders, Arkle marked the name before the body stopped twitching. Othran, slain beneath the lower vaults of Corcyran Secundus. Det witnessed. He crushed a servo skull beneath his boot and moved on. Othran, the squad answered. The name became weight. The weight became motion. The motion became killing. Elsewhere in the base, beneath a ceiling that rained concrete dust and bone fragments, Harvester Sava knelt beside the body of a Carcharodon. The dead warrior had been Brother Iokua. His helm had been sheared open from brow to jaw by a power axe. The skull beneath had split in the same line, exposing grey brain and black blood. His right arm was gone. His left hand still gripped a combat blade, buried in the corpse of the executioner who had killed him. Sava worked without hesitation. He wore pale grey plate, marked not with healer's tenderness, but with the sacred tools of preservation. His narthecium whined along his forearm, needles retracting, cutters extending, reductor drill waking with a high insect shriek. Bolt rounds cracked against the wall around him. One struck his backpack and burst against reinforced casing, showering sparks over Yokua's open torso. Another clipped the edge of his pauldron and spun him half around. Sava turned back to the corpse. Gene seed mattered. The dead did not. He cut through broken armor, split fused rib, opened the chest cavity, and reached into the sacred meat beneath. His gauntlet emerged slick and black-red, cradling what had to be taken. A progenoid gland slid into the preservation canister with a soft, wet sound. He sealed it, logged it, began the second extraction. Across the corridor, Castigar saw him. The executioner had just driven his axe through the hip of a Carcharodon assault brother and kicked the dying warrior backward into a defense beam. The Carcharodon separated in a flash of light, upper body still clawing at the floor. Castigar turned through the drifting smoke and saw Sava kneeling over the dead. "Apothecary," he voxed. "Alive." Brother Garen's reply was immediate. "Why?" "He may know why the grey ghosts came. Take him." "Take a shark alive," Garen growled. "By the headsman, you ask for ugly work. Then make it useful." Two executioners moved in. Sava did not look up until the first shadow fell across him. Brother Prasad tried to pin the apothecary's weapon arm with a shield. Sava shifted, faster than the damaged armor suggested, and drove his reductor into the shield's vision slit. The drill punched through plasteel, through the lens, through the eye behind it, and into the brain. Prasad roared, not in fear but fury, and hammered the shield forward, even as blood flooded his helm. Brother Garen seized Sava from behind. Sava let him. The narthecium cutter unfolded beneath the angle of Garen's arm and bit into the executioner's elbow seal. It severed fiber bundles, tendons, muscle and bone in a single whining cut. Garen's forearm dropped away, still clenched in a fist. He headbutted Sava hard enough to crack both helms. Sava turned inside the grip and punched the reductor beneath Garen's gorget. The tool was meant to open the dead. It opened the living well enough. Garen's armor split from throat to pelvis in a wet, sparking line. Black blood and organ steam washed over Sava's gauntlet. Garen tried to laugh and drowned on what filled his helm. Sava shoved him aside. Castigar came for him then. The apothecary fired a bolt pistol once. Castigar took the shell on his pauldron and kept coming. Sava drew a long surgical blade, its edge vibrating with a monomolecular hum. Castigar struck low with the haft of his axe, not the blade, smashing Sava's knee joint sideways. The apothecary dropped to one leg. His reductor rose for Castigar's throat. A defense laser cut between them, forcing both warriors apart behind opposite pillars. When the beam died, Sava was gone into smoke and broken conduit, dragging one leg, progenoid canister's mag locked to his belt. Castigar looked at Garin. The executioner lay open, limbs twitching, his severed arm several paces away, fingers still curling as if searching for a throat. Arkel's voice entered the Vox. "Garin, slain in the lower vault pursuit. Det witnessed." Castigar watched the dark where Sava had vanished. "Not paid," he said. Above them, in the base's command chamber, Prince Vel Atro believed words still held value. He had named himself Prince because smugglers loved titles stolen from better men. His throne was a grav chair mounted upon ammunition crates. His court had been quartermasters, killers, data thieves, narcotic factors, and void route brokers. Most were dead now. One hung from a ceiling cable with his lower body gone. Another had shot himself when the defense system awakened. Atro still lived because his chamber had 3 shielded doors, independent air, and a Vox array powerful enough to speak across the whole base. He opened every channel. "To all Imperial forces within my hold fast," he said, voice cracking despite the amplification. "This is Prince Vel Atro, recognized master of Corcyra Trade Compact. I offer unconditional surrender. I possess codes, routes, munitions access, prisoners, gene stock rumors, anything you desire. Spare my person, and I shall serve whatever writ you claim." For a time, only static answered him. Then the executioners came through the western wall. Not the door, the wall. Breaching charges punched inward. Shield brothers entered through dust and smoke. Prince Atro screamed for them to see his empty hands. Castigar stepped through the breach. "Oathless," the executioner said. Atro fell from his chair, crawling. "My lord, I surrender. I surrender to the Emperor's angels. I have value. Value is not honor." The eastern wall exploded inward before Castigar could finish him. Grey armor entered from the other side. Carcharodons, helms blank, bolters raised. Koromar came last, moving through smoke as if born in it. Atro looked between them, sobbing now, hands raised to both. I surrender to both. Take me, use me, I can give you everything." Koromar's voice came cold across the chamber. Contamination. Castigar's bolt pistol rose. Koromar's bolter rose with it. Both fired. Atro became a burst across his own throne, his body torn apart by shells from opposite sides. The chamber dissolved into war an instant later. Executioners and Carcharodons opened fire across the dead prince's remains. Cogitator banks burst. Smuggler banners burned. A skull-topped scepter spun across the floor, clattering through blood until an Astarte's boot crushed it flat. The dead prince's surrender remained open on Vox for several seconds, repeating over and over in a broken loop until someone shot the array. I surrender. I surrender. I surrender. No one listened. The fighting drove both forces downward into the hall of engines. It was the heart of the base, and it was dying. Massive plasma conduits ran along the walls like arteries full of imprisoned suns. Pressure gauges spun madly. Coolant waterfalls poured from ruptured pipes, flashing into steam when they touched exposed plasma housings. The air was white with vapor and red with emergency lumens. Human bodies floated in shallow floods of coolant and blood. Murder servitors fired from gantries until both chapters destroyed them almost as an afterthought. Then the Carcharodon Dreadnought entered the hall. It came through a curtain of steam like something dredged from the abyss beneath creation. Contemptor pattern. Ancient. Vast. Its sarcophagus was grey and black, scarred by ages of war, marked with shark teeth and kill glyphs, worn almost smooth by time. One arm bore a heavy conversion beamer assembly, patched with void-borne repairs. The other ended in a chain fist, big enough to tear open a tank. Its reactor growled with a deep animal note that made the deck tremble beneath it. Its name rune flickered unreadable across Koromar's helm. Old, damaged, half mad from stasis. The Dreadnought spoke in a voice like stone dragged across iron. "Red work," Koromar answered. "Red work." The Ancient charged. It did not run like a living warrior. It advanced like an industrial calamity, with hatred entombed inside. Its conversion beam fired into an executioner shield knot, and turned the forward brother into light, armor and flesh, disassembling in a flash that painted the walls black. Its chain fist struck another warrior, and drove him through the floor grating, body folding around the blow, before vanishing into the machinery beneath. Executioner's heavy weapons answered. A multi-melter beam struck the Dreadnought's sarcophagus, and boiled armor from its front in glowing streams. Plasma fire splashed across its left side. Crack missiles hammered its legs. The Contemptor staggered, then crushed Brother Kale beneath one foot, with a sound like a tree trunk bursting wet inside metal. Arkle strode toward it through steam, Crozius' axe raised. "Ancient," he voxed on open channel, "name yourself, that your death may be recorded." The Dreadnought turned its burning optics toward him. "Forgotten," it said. Then it swung. Arkle threw himself aside as the chain fist cut through the pillar behind him. The pillar collapsed. The ceiling groaned. Castigar saw the opening and gave the order that would kill brothers and perhaps bring down the god machine. "Climb it." The executioners obeyed. They swarmed the Contemptor. Brother Prasad, half blind and leaking blood from his ruined helm, slammed into its left leg with a melter charge already primed. A sweep of the chain fist caught him and tore him apart from shoulder to hip, but his remaining hand slapped the charge into place before his body fell away. Brother Damas leapt onto the Dreadnought's back, chain axe shrieking against reactor vents until defensive discharges cooked him inside his armor. Brother Malrek climbed the right arm and drove crack grenades into the elbow joint before the Ancient smashed him against the wall. The impact flattened Malrek into the rockcrete. His body burst inside the armor. Blood and organs sprayed from every split seal. The wall cracked behind him. When the Dreadnought pulled away, Malrek remained plastered there for a heartbeat before sliding down in a red smear. His severed hand stayed locked around a live charge lodged beneath the sarcophagus rim. Castigar saw it. So did the Dreadnought. The Ancient tried to turn. The charge detonated. The blast struck the Contemptor from beneath its sarcophagus and blew armor plating outward in burning slabs. The great machine staggered. Its chain fist carved a wild arc through steam and took the head from an executioner too slow to duck. Then its left knee buckled. A second melter charge detonated at the hip. The Dreadnought crashed down onto one knee hard enough to split the floor plating. It did not die. It reached forward and seized Brother Damas's corpse, using the dead warrior as a club to smash another executioner from his feet. Castigar came in beneath the swing, axe lit, every warning rune in his helm screaming. He struck the damaged knee joint, once, twice. A third blow bit deep through pistons and sacred metal. The Dreadnought's optics flared. "Red," the Ancient said. Koromar watched from the far side of the hall, bolter dry, blade drawn. The Contemptor lurched, wounded beyond balance. Its chain fist punched downward, not at an enemy, but into the engine chamber floor. Whether by madness, instinct, or the final spasm of a dying machine spirit, it tore through the weakened plating and ripped the hall open. The floor gave way. Sections of the Hall of Engines collapsed in a roar of metal, stone, steam, bodies, and broken machinery. A gulf opened beneath the combatants, swallowing corpses, gun thralls, burning promethium, and chunks of engine shrine. Ancient dust rose from below, colder and older than the storm outside. The Contemptor fell forward, half buried in the wreckage, one optic still burning. Beneath the engine chamber, Where no smuggler had ever dug deep enough to understand what he squatted upon, lay another structure. Not imperial in any clean sense. Older, vaster. A buried vault of black metal and dead machinery, its walls lined with silent cogitator columns and cables thick as tree trunks. Cold lights blinked in the dark below, answering the false signal engine above. The lies in the Vox, the ghost routes, the corrupted summons that had drawn predators into the same throat, all of it pulsed from somewhere in that depth. For the first time since the killing began, both chapters looked down. Steam poured into the opened wound. Blood dripped from the broken floor into the ancient dark. Then, far below, something dead remembered that it had not finished speaking. The wound beneath the hall of engines breathed cold. Steam descended into it in long white veils, dragged downward by pressure shifts from chambers that had not tasted open air since before the smugglers built their stolen kingdom above. Blood followed in slower offerings, dripping from broken floor plates, from split armor, from the butchered dead caught on torn reinforcement spars. The blood struck the black metal far below and spread in thin, dark stars across a surface that did not rust, did not drink, did not remember mercy. Coromar descended first. He did not use the shattered access ladders. They had not been made for his weight, and several were already twisted into useless spirals by the collapse. He went down by mag, locking his boots to exposed wall ribs and lowering himself through the fumes, one hand gripping broken conduit, the other holding his bolter across his chest. Around him, loose stones fell into the dark. Some struck metal. Some did not seem to strike anything at all. His helm display struggled to render the depths. Auspec's pulses returned bent. Range runes flickered, died, returned with impossible distances, then flattened into static. The buried structure drank signals and returned ghosts. His armor's machine spirit whispered irritation through the nerve plugs in his black carapace. Coromar ignored it. The others followed in silence. Brother Tain came after him, chain blade locked against one thigh, armor scraped pale where executioner blows had bitten through old grey paint. Brother Manumata descended beside him, his left knee moving with a grinding hitch from the generator nave. Harvester Sava lowered himself last, progenoid canisters secured beneath layers of armor plating, narthecium still slick from the meat of friend and foe. No one asked after the brothers who did not. Descend. The dead had already been measured. If their gene seed had been recovered, they endured. If not, they had become offering to the red work. They reached the floor of the buried vault and stood within a corridor too narrow for war. The walls were ribbed with ancient metal, black and dull, curving inward like the throat of some fossilized beast. Dust lay thick upon the ground, but it was not the yellow ash of Corcyran Secundus. This dust was grey, fine, heavy with the scent of sealed centuries, older than the smugglers, older than their false prince, perhaps older than the Imperium that had later claimed this world by ink, blood, and ignorance. Coromar crouched and touched 2 fingers to it. The dust clung to his gauntlet. He rubbed it slowly between thumb and forefinger. Not storm dust, Tain voxed. No, Coromar said. Manumata scanned the wall with his auspex. The rune returns trembled and smeared. Structure extends beneath the entire base. Multiple levels. Power still present. Weak. Buried systems active. Smugglers were parasites, Sava said. His voice carried no judgment, only diagnosis. Coromar looked ahead into the ribbed dark. Then we cut deeper. Above and behind them, the executioners descended by other means. They did not climb like hunters easing into a wreck. They forced a path with cables, grapnels, and brute certainty. Armor slammed against metal. Broken masonry fell with them. A wounded brother lost his grip and dropped the final span, landing hard enough to crack the black floor beneath his boots. He rose at once, though his right leg armor was half crushed, and his blood leaked through the knee seal. Castigar watched him stand and gave a single nod. Good. Weakness acknowledged and overcome was not weakness. The executioners gathered in axe bands rather than a full line. The descent had split them, just as the sealed base had split them. 5 with Castigar, 3 with Brother Prasad, if Prasad still lived, 2 following the Death Speaker, others elsewhere, their runes distorted by the walls until Brother and Ghost appeared the same. Vox contact came in scraps, each word grated raw by the buried vault's interference. Left passage sealed, murder servitors behind, debt witnessed, not alone. Castigar muted the worst of the static and moved forward. His helm lenses painted the corridor in red threat light. The ancient metal walls bore no devotional icons, no aquila, no cogwheel mark, no smuggler graffiti. That absence displeased him more than blasphemy would have. Blasphemy could be struck down. Absence only watched. They found the first corpses in a control chamber, shaped like a circular pit. The chamber's thrones ringed a central column of dead cogitator stacks. Each throne held a body in an old void suit, the fabric hardened to shell, the seals fused to the metal beneath. The corpses had elongated skulls, stretched by pressure, mutation, age, or some failure of burial that Castigar had no desire to name. Their fingers were still plugged into cogitator keys by black cables grown through bone. Their faceplates were opaque with ancient frost. Brother Damas raised his bolter. "Here tech remains." Castigar looked at the bodies. Their posture suggested duty, not worship. Their hands had died at their stations. Their machines had not. It made no difference. "Destroy them," he said. Bolters barked in the circular chamber. The old skulls burst inside their helmets, spraying powder, frozen tissue, and fragments of yellow bone across the control thrones. Damas tore the cables free with his gauntlet, ripping finger bones from sockets. Another brother drove a chain axe through the central cogitator column until dead lights flared and went black. Death Speaker Arkle watched from the chamber mouth. "They sat long," he said. "They sat wrongly," Castigar answered. "That is enough." "It is." Arkle inclined his skull helm. "Then the axe has judged." They left the chamber broken behind them. Farther below, Koromar's kill team found the same truth by quieter signs. Maintenance markings under dust. Signal conduits running upward into the smuggler base. Power feeds spliced by crude hands into elegant older systems. False route projection engines hidden behind panels the smugglers had never opened properly. The thieves above had not built the lure. They had nested atop it, fed from it, sold fragments of its lies, perhaps never understanding that the machine beneath them was older and more dangerous than their greed. Tain pulled a data spike from a cracked terminal. Badab transponder patterns, multiple flags, loyalist, secessionist, outdated authority seals, repeating. Koromar studied the ghost strings scrolling across his display. Convoy paths that led to minefields, interdiction orders that contradicted themselves, threat identifiers looping with corrupted priority codes, recognition ciphers degraded but still strong enough to wake old guns and blind newer augurs. "No living hand," Manumata said. "Automated," Koromar agreed. Sava looked back toward the upper levels. The machine heard the war and answered with old rot. No one spoke for several breaths. The possibility sat among them, cold and vast. No enemy prince, no cunning admiral, no Xenos whisper, no sorcerous hand, only imperial decay, dead protocols and forgotten machinery calling warriors into a grave because ancient orders could no longer tell loyalty from treachery. Koromar closed the data feed. "Cause does not alter judgment." "No," Sava said. "It does not." They moved on. The buried vault narrowed, widened, and narrowed again. It became less a structure than a throat, descending by steep ramps and ribbed shafts toward the furnace pulse below. Heat bled from the depths, not warm enough to cleanse the cold, but enough to make blood steam where it touched the walls. Vox contact failed entirely for a span. The Carcharodons split into smaller claws, 2 by 2 and alone, each warrior trusting the others to continue their work beyond sight. The executioners did the same, though not by preference. Blast doors fell between them. Defense shutters sealed corridors. The old vault shaped them into smaller bands, feeding them into separate arteries, making their war intimate again. It was in the throat above the reactor chasm that the two hungers met. The chasm cut through the buried vault from wall to wall, a wound lit from below by a slow red glow. Reactor stacks descended into darkness, their casings cracked, their cores pulsing like buried hearts. Bridges had once crossed the gulf. Most were gone. Only a broken span remained, jutting from either side with 20 paces of open void between them. Chains hung from the ceiling, thick with dust, some ending in hooks, some in nothing. Heat rose from below in slow, oily waves. Coromar stood on the eastern edge with Tain and Sava. Castigar emerged on the western edge with Arkle and 2 axe brothers. For the first time since the killing began, no one fired. Dust drifted between them. Reactor light painted grey and gunmetal armor in the same bloodshade. The chasm breathed beneath their feet. Arkle raised his Crozius axe. "Name yourselves," Coromar answered in cold High Gothic, each word formal, archaic, stripped of warmth. "We are the judgment sent from the outer dark. We are the teeth of the Void Father. This world and all within it are condemned." Castigar's reply came in harsh battlefield Low Gothic, blunt enough to bruise. "You speak like a sealed writ pretending to be a warrior." Tain shifted his bolter a fraction. Coromar did not. Castigar stepped closer to the broken edge. "Only the Emperor judges. We are his axe." "The axe stands with oath breakers," Coromar said. "The axe stands with oath," Castigar answered. "That is more than Carrion in Grey can understand." Arkle's skull helm turned toward Coromar. "You hide behind silence. You kill without witness. You erase what should be weighed." Coromar looked from the Death Speaker to Castigar. "Corcyran Secundus has been weighed." Castigar lifted his power axe, and its field woke with a hungry crackle. "Then hear the sentence. Then swing," Coromar said. The parley died before its echo reached the lower dark. Castigar fired first. The bolt shell crossed the chasm and struck Tain's pauldron, spinning him half around, but not dropping him. Coromar answered with a burst that forced Arkle back behind a broken support. The 2 axe brothers hurled chain grapnels across the gap. Hooks bit into the far ledge. Jump packs flared in the enclosed space, filling the chasm throat with thunder, flame, and smoke. The battle became vertical slaughter. An executioner launched himself across the gulf, axe raised, jump pack screaming. Tain met him in midair with bolter fire. One shell detonated against the warrior's helm. Bone fragments and blackened brain matter sprayed across the inside of the cracked faceplate, but momentum carried him onward. He crashed into Tain, and both slammed against the eastern wall. Tain drove a combat blade beneath his enemy's ribs. The executioner buried a chain axe into Tain's shoulder, teeth chewing through pauldron, collar, flesh, and secondary bone. They fell together, striking the broken ledge, rolling over it, vanishing into reactor darkness, still locked together. Sava fired into a chain line and severed it. The executioner, climbing across, dropped without a sound, hitting a reactor stack far below in a burst of sparks and broken armor. Another chain snapped taut around Sava's leg. He looked down as it bit into his greave. An axe brother on the far side hauled with both hands, trying to drag him from the ledge. Sava let himself slide 1 pace. Then he cut the chain with his Narthesium blade and fired his bolt pistol into the pulling warrior's face. The shell struck the executioner's mouth grill and detonated behind it. The helm burst outward, spraying teeth, lens glass, and cooked meat across the oath scrolls hanging from his chest. Castigar crossed by, leaping to a hanging chain, swinging his full armored mass across the gulf and crashing into the eastern ledge hard enough to crack the lip beneath him. Koromar met him before he gained footing. Bolter muzzle struck axe haft. Power field scored grey armor. A ceramite fist slammed into Castigar's helm, snapping his head to the side. Castigar answered with a knee into Koromar's abdomen seal and a short headbutt that fractured one black lens. They parted only because the ledge beneath them began to crumble. Arkell crossed more slowly, using chains and broken bridge ribs, chanting as he came. Othran, Garin, Vaughn, Malrek, Kyle, not yet fallen, Damas, still under witness, Vare, unanswered from Sagan's reach, Helbrun, answered in flame. A Carcharodon veteran rose to meet him from the smoke, carrying a relic chain axe, whose teeth were black from old wars. His armor was Mark III across the chest, and Mark V at the limbs, mismatched, scarred, severe. A shark jaw had been painted across his helm grill in white. Arkell struck first with the Crozius axe. The Carcharodon caught the blow on the chain axe haft, and drove a knee into the Death Speaker's breastplate. Arkell staggered, then laughed once and struck again. "Name?" Arkell demanded. The Carcharodon did not answer. Their weapons crashed together. Disruption field met chain teeth. Sparks and fragments of metal sprayed into the chasm. Arkell chanted the dead between blows, his voice growing harsher, louder, more furious with every silence that answered him. "Garin!" The Carcharodon cut low, chain axe screaming against Arkell's thigh plate. "Othran!" Arkell slammed his Crozius haft into the warrior's helm and cracked the painted jaw mark. "Vaughn!" The Carcharodon drove forward, silent as suffocation, and carved through Arkell's side with the chain axe. Blood sprayed across both warriors. Arkell seized the haft with one hand and trapped it there, teeth still chewing into his armor. "Speak!" the Death Speaker snarled. The Carcharodon leaned closer. Through the cracked helm, one black eye glimmered. Silence. Arkell roared, not in pain but insult, and headbutted him so hard the Carcharodon's faceplate caved inward. He followed with the Crozius axe into the warrior's neck. The disruptor field flared. The helm came free in a burst of blood, fiber cables and torn vertebrae. Arkell held the head by its broken jaw and looked into the dead face within. "Unwitnessed no longer," he said. On a lower ledge choked with corpses, Harvester Sava knelt amid the fallen. 2 executioners lay near him, both dead from the chasm fighting. Their armor was split, but their chest cavities remained recoverable. His autosenses marked the locations of progenoid glands with cold medical certainty. One body had intact gene seed, the other perhaps. He reached toward the first corpse. His narthecium extended, then stopped. The gland was viable, strong, worth preserving in the abstract calculations of genecraft and war. But it was not of the void blood, not of the chapter's line, not sanctified by the rites of the red tithe, not marked for the long hunger. To take it would not be recovery. It would be theft of a lineage not judged for their vaults. Sava withdrew the tool. "Not ours," he voxed to no one nearby. A wounded Carcharodon dragging himself along the ledge looked toward him. "Viable?" the warrior asked. "Yes." "Then why leave it?" Sava sealed the corpse's broken chestplate with one bloody palm, not in kindness, but in taboo. Not of the void blood. The wounded warrior accepted this, and died a few breaths later. The chasm battle spread through side passages and lower galleries. Every route became a fall hazard, every bridge a killing ground. Astartes vanished into the red dark. Some died before they hit bottom. Some struck the reactor stacks and broke open. Others clung to chains with one hand while firing pistols with the other. A Carcharodon hauled an executioner close by the throat and bit through the exposed flesh of his cheek where the helm had cracked. The executioner drove a knife into the Carcharodon's eye socket and twisted until the blade snapped. Koromar and Castigar met twice more in the chaos and failed to end each other both times. The first time, Castigar's axe took a plate from Koromar's side and opened the flesh beneath. Koromar answered by shooting Castigar in the hip at point-blank range. The shell detonated shallow, tearing armor, staggering him, but not dropping him. The second time, Coromar drove Castigar backward toward the chasm with 3 blows from a dead executioner's own chain axe. Castigar let the third strike carry him, caught the weapon haft, and pulled Coromar into a headbutt that filled both their helm displays with static. A falling body separated them before either could finish the work. The old vault decided the next movement. Brother Damas, pinned beneath fallen bridge metal with both legs crushed and one arm gone below the elbow, watched Carcharodon runes advancing through a flanking gallery on his cracked helm display. If they crossed that passage, they would come behind Castigar's position. The debt would become disorder. Disorder would become shame. He had one hand left. One seismic charge remained locked to his belt. Damas laughed through a mouthful of blood. Death Speaker. Arkell heard him through the distortion. Speak. Name me. Damas. Not yet. Now. The Death Speaker paused for less than a heartbeat. Damas. Slain beneath the throat of Corcyran Secundus. Debt witnessed. Good. Damas armed the seismic charge and pressed it against the black metal floor. A Carcharodon appeared at the far end of the gallery, bolter rising. Damas showed him a bloody smile through his shattered helm. The charge detonated. The buried vault did not explode so much as remember gravity. A deep crack raced through the chasm wall. The flanking gallery folded inward. Reactor light vanished behind falling metal. The ceiling came down in slabs. Chains snapped. Servitors hidden in wall alcoves were crushed before their guns could wake. Smugglers who had somehow survived in lower maintenance holes died without understanding what killed them. Astartes vanished beneath the collapse, grey and gunmetal alike, armor breaking under the weight of ancient stone and pre-imperial metal. The shockwave hurled Coromar through a control arch and slammed him against the far wall. His armor locked around him. His breath stopped, then restarted in a wet rasp as secondary organs compensated. Runes flashed red across his vision. He rose. Across a new canyon of rubble, Castigar dragged himself from beneath a fallen chain, one pauldron crushed, axe still in hand. For a moment, through dust and collapsing darkness, they saw one another again. Then the vault dropped another level between them. The collapse did what neither chapter had yet achieved. It cut the war apart. Upper access routes vanished beneath thousands of tons of rockcrete and ancient metal. The hall of engines above became unreachable, a ceiling of wreckage and fire. Thunderhawk beacons tried to lock through the dust storm and failed. Teleport augurs from the ships above sought armor transponders and found only static, mineral scatter, and the interference of dead machines. Vox signals became trapped echoes moving through the buried vault, like ghosts. Coromar heard the strike cruiser once, distant and broken. Extraction, denied, interference, primary, then nothing. Castigar received a fragment from the night hag, half drowned in static. Landing impossible. Storm. Void shields. Hold. Then silence. The surviving warriors stood or crawled or dragged themselves upright in the dark beneath Corcyran Secundus, their ammunition counters low, their brothers scattered, their routes sealed, their dead uncounted. The base above had been a battlefield. The vault below had become a tomb. There would be no withdrawal, no clean extraction, no commander's recall, no Thunderhawk ramp opening through smoke, no teleport flare to carry the wounded back to Apothecary slabs and chapel judgment. Only the dark, only the debt, only the red work left unfinished between them. The war lost its shape in the dark beneath Corcyran Secundus. It did not become smaller. It became worse. Above, war had possessed direction. Corridors had been taken, doors breached, vaults entered, kill zones marked and answered. Orders had moved along Vox channels, thin but living. Brothers had known where other brothers stood. Command had existed as more than memory and instinct. Below, in the buried throat of the dead installation, the battle came apart. Vox traffic degraded into scraps of breath, static and dying oath. A warrior's name would crackle through the dark, followed by the wet rasp of a punctured lung inside a sealed helm. A kill confirmation would begin and dissolve into interference. A Death Speaker's tally would bleed across Carcharodon battle cant for half a heartbeat, then vanish beneath the howl of old machinery turning in its sleep. Armor transponders multiplied and died on Auspex displays, each rune smeared by mineral ghosts, until living brothers and cooling corpses became the same pale uncertainty. Coromar moved through that uncertainty without haste. His bolter hung empty at his side. The ammunition rune had gone black after the last firefight in the lower galleries, when a knot of gun thralls had awakened in the walls and forced him to spend his remaining shells breaking their skull housings before their rotary cannons could gut Brother Tain. The weapon remained in his hand because it was still a club, still mass, still something consecrated by use. But the red work had changed. It was no longer fire and movement. It was knife, hand, breath, pressure, the breaking of sealed flesh inside sacred plate. Brother Tain was gone. His rune had vanished during the collapse. Brother Manumata's rune flickered somewhere behind a wall of fallen metal, too weak to trust. Harvester Sava moved elsewhere in the dark, his signal appearing and disappearing like a blade seen beneath black water. Coromar had no squad in the Mana Codex chapters understood the word. He had fragments, claws, hunger divided by stone and dead machines. The first surviving smuggler he found was on his knees beneath a broken conduit, hands raised, eyes red from dust. "Mercy," the man croaked. Coromar passed him without slowing. The man sobbed thanks to a god that did not answer. A moment later, the smuggler rose and grabbed at the hanging ammunition pouch on Coromar's belt, perhaps hoping for a weapon, perhaps too mad with terror to know what his hand sought. Coromar turned, seized him by the face, and drove his skull into the wall. Once was enough to break bone. Twice made the shape unrecognizable. The corpse slid down the ribbed metal and left a dark trail. No warning, no judgment spoken, no acknowledgement that mercy had been requested. In the cold of the void, all sounds ended. The deeper Coromar went, the more formal his thoughts became. The old rites surfaced as the living world withdrew. The enemy has taken the lower passages. The enemy holds breath and blade. The enemy is oath-bound but condemned. The enemy may not depart with knowledge. The enemy may not depart. Then even that language fell away. Movement, heat, kill. Elsewhere, the executioners answered decay with noise. Castigar heard them before he saw them. Axe hafts hammered against breastplates in the dark. Chain teeth snarled and died and snarled again as warriors tested damaged motors. Voices rolled along the sealed corridors, some laughing, some chanting, some challenging enemies by kill name, even when no enemy answered. Grey Carrion, come and be weighed. Void Dog, I have room on the chain. By the headman's oath, stand where I can see you. The words were not panic. Panic had a different rhythm. This was fury disciplined by ritual. This was a chapter refusing to become lost simply because stone had swallowed its formations and dead machines had bitten through its vox. The executioners made sound to remind the dark that they had entered it willingly. Castigar's own armor was failing in degrees. The hip joint damaged by Coromar's point-blank shot dragged half a breath behind his intent. His left pauldron had been crushed inward, biting into the flesh beneath. Blood had dried and cracked down his side, where the Carcharodon had opened a seam under his ribs. The pain suppressants fed into him in measured doses, never enough to dull thought, only enough to keep his hands true. His bolt pistol clicked empty after killing a murder servitor in a shrine corridor lined with stolen Saint Bones. He looked at the useless pistol for a heartbeat, then Mag locked it to his thigh and drew his combat knife. Brother Prasad limped beside him, with half his helm ruined and one lens dark. His shield was gone. He carried a chain axe in his remaining hand, its motor coughing, its teeth missing in ugly gaps. "Rounds?" Castigar asked. "None." "Grenades?" One blind. Arm? Still mine. Then you are armed. Prasad laughed through blood-flooded Vox. Witnessed. Ahead, Death Speaker Arkel's voice came through the static. Nearer now, iron hard beneath distortion. Othran, Garin, Vaughn, Malrek, Damas, debt witnessed, debt unpaid. Kyle, status unknown. Prasad, wounded but standing. Castigar, under oath. The dead watch, the living answer. Aye, Castigar said. The corridor opened into a broader chamber, and a grey shape lunged from the left. The Carcharodon was young by the measure of transhuman monsters. Not a scout in the mortal sense, not frail, not soft, but an initiate or newly blooded battle brother, wearing lighter plates patched into old grey armor. His helm was gone. His face was pale, almost bloodless beneath streaks of ash. Black eyes looked through Castigar rather than at him. He carried a broken chainsword, with only half its teeth still moving. Castigar turned the first strike with his knife. The impact rang up his arm. The Carcharodon pressed close at once, silent, expressionless, driving with short, brutal movements that wasted nothing. Prasad moved to assist, but another grey warrior struck from the dark and dragged him away in a crash of armor. Castigar and the initiate fought alone in the narrow threshold. The Carcharodon cut his thigh seal. Castigar caught the return stroke on his forearm plate and smashed his helm into the initiate's face. Bone broke. Blood came black-red from the nose. The initiate did not blink, did not snarl, did not show anger. Castigar drove the knife into the young warrior's side, felt the blade scrape rib, then twist past it. The Carcharodon grabbed Castigar's wrist with both hands and pulled the knife deeper into himself, trapping it there while his broken chainsword rose for Castigar's throat. Castigar released the knife and punched him in the face. The first blow flattened the nose further. The second cracked the cheek. The third broke the jaw and drove teeth into the mouth. Still, the Carcharodon looked at him without fear. Worse than that, without hatred, without recognition, as if Castigar were not a warrior, not a debt, not a name to be taken, merely resistance, a wall, a pressure change, something to pass through or die against. Castigar seized him by the back of the skull and slammed him against the threshold until the stone split. The initiate's hands clawed at his gorget, weakening only after Castigar drew a broken length of chainsword from the floor and hammered the dead teeth into the side of his neck. The Carcharodon sank to his knees. His black eyes remained open, empty, calm. Castigar stood above him, breathing through damaged filters. He did not take the head. Prasad dragged himself back into view, his chain axe buried in the chest of the warrior who had attacked him. No trophy? Castigar looked down at the initiate. Unfinished prey. He fought. He did not witness me. Prasad spat blood inside his helm. Sharks do not witness. They feed. Then they die unnamed. They moved on, leaving the young Carcharodon where he had fallen, eyes open in the dark. Koromar found the three executioners holding the corridor beyond the lower reliquary vault. At first, he thought there were more of them. Their noise filled the passage with the weight of a squad, bolters firing in disciplined bursts, chain-axe motors snarling, challenges rolling through static. But when he reached the shadow of a broken support arch and looked through the dust, he saw only three. They had made a wall of themselves. One had no left arm. The limb was gone at the shoulder, the stump sealed badly with emergency foam that had failed under renewed movement. He braced his bolter one-handed against a fallen cogitator block and fired each shot slowly, making every shell count. Another stood beside him with his abdomen open inside his armor, guts and black blood pressing through cracked plate whenever he moved. His chain axe hung from a wrist loop because his grip had weakened, yet he still swung it whenever a Carcharodon came near. The third had lost his helm. His face was a ruin of burns, teeth exposed through one cheek, one eye gone. He laughed every time he fired. 6 Carcharodons pressed them from both sides. No one broke. A grey brother lunged low. The armless executioner shot him through the knee. then through the throat as he fell. Another Carcharodon vaulted the corpse and drove a blade into the gut-wounded warrior's chest. The executioner wrapped both arms around him, dragging him close, and bit into the seal beneath the Carcharodon's jaw. The two went down together, knife and teeth and gauntlets working in silence, broken only by wet impacts. The helmless executioner saw Coromar emerge from the arch. "Another one," he voxed, voice bubbling through blood. "Good." Coromar raised his empty bolter and threw it. The weapon struck the armless executioner's faceplate hard enough to turn his head. Coromar crossed the distance behind it. His combat blade entered under the gorget and came out through the side of the neck. The executioner dropped the bolter and seized Coromar's wrist before death took him, holding him in place long enough for the helm-less warrior to swing a chain axe at Coromar's spine. Coromar twisted. The teeth bit into his backpack instead, chewing sparks from the reactor housing. He reversed his grip and drove the blade backward into the laughing warrior's remaining eye. The laughter stopped only when the blade reached brain. The last executioner, the one with his abdomen open, dragged himself upright by sheer hate and locked both hands around Coromar's throat. He had no weapon left. Neither did he require one. They slammed into the wall. The executioner's strength remained monstrous, despite the meat hanging from his armor. Coromar felt his gorget begin to deform beneath the pressure. He struck the warrior's ribs with his fist. Once, twice. The third blow cracked ceramite inward. The executioner pressed harder. "Stand!" the warrior growled through blood. "Stand and be counted." Coromar drove his thumb through the cracked abdominal plate and up beneath the rib mass. He found one of the hearts by pressure and tore. The executioner convulsed, still holding him.
Remember, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Support helps.
Coromar tore again. The grip weakened. When the warrior fell, Coromar looked down at the three bodies. They had delayed twice their number. They had laughed while dying. "They were not prey," he said into the dead Vox. No one answered. The chapel of illicit saints had been beautiful once, in the manner of stolen things arranged by men who did not understand them. It lay in the mid-levels above the buried vault, half collapsed, but still reachable through a spiral service stair, choked with corpses. The smugglers had built it from plunder, taken across a dozen raids. Saint statues from shrine barges, brass aquilus pried from navy bulkheads, reliquary boxes stripped of proper seals and refilled with false bones, candles made from corpse fat, purity scrolls stolen from dead officers and glued to the walls beside smuggler tallies. A cracked stained glass window showed the emperor enthroned in gold, though some vandal had replaced his face with a mirror so that each supplicant would see himself crowned. Both chapters found it offensive. That was the only agreement left between them. The surviving humans had gathered there because stolen holiness was still holiness to frightened men. They were trying to power the chapel Vox array from a portable generator, screaming into the receiver for rescue, for truce, for anyone in orbit to hear. The message was weak, distorted, but alive. Corcyra Holdfast calls any Imperial vessel. Astartes engagement inside the base. We surrender. We request extraction. We request mercy. We request... A Carcharodon entered through the rear wall in a burst of stone dust. An executioner entered through the nave doors a heartbeat later. Then the chapel became rubble beneath Faith's own guardians. Castigar saw the false emperor mirror shatter when a Carcharodon body struck it head first. Arkle advanced beside him, Crozius axe blazing, his skull helm painted with blood that was not all his. Grey warriors moved between saint statues, blades low, silent as grave water. Executioners answered with roars, hammering axe hafts against armor, calling challenge names through the hymn-choked air. A statue of Saint Drusus fell when Brother Prasad drove an enemy through its base. The stone saint crushed two smugglers beneath it, their prayers ending as wet cracks. A brass aquila spun from the wall and impaled a kneeling man through the back. Bolt shells struck false reliquaries, blasting bone dust and stolen ashes across the fighting Astartes like dirty snow. Arkle met Coromar beneath the mirrored throne. The Death Speaker's vox boomed across the chapel. "Kinslayers wearing old writs, that is what you are. You spill brother blood and call it judgment." Coromar stepped over a crawling smuggler without looking down. The man reached toward him. Coromar's boot came down and broke his spine. "You stand with traitors by choice," the Carcharodon said. His high Gothic was cold enough to make each word feel carved. "Oath or not, you stand condemned." "The oath is the measure," Arkle snarled. "The deed is the measure." Castigar came through the side aisle, axe raised. "Then measure this." The fight crashed together beneath the stolen saints. There was no space for bolter lines now, no order, no clean squad work. Ammunition had dwindled into isolated shots, saved for certain kills. Chain weapons died one by one, their teeth clogged with ceramite splinters and meat. A Carcharodon strangled an executioner with a torn power cable until the gunmetal warrior broke the cable with his teeth and punched through the Carcharodon's throat. An executioner used a broken saint statue as a maul, smashing a grey warrior's knee backward before another Carcharodon opened his neck with a knife. Castigar's axe took an arm from one enemy and buried itself in a pillar. He abandoned it for 3 breaths, fighting with fists until he could kick the dying Carcharodon away and wrench the blade free. Coromar killed Brother Prasad beneath the altar. Prasad came at him with the blind grenade in one hand and a broken chain axe in the other. Coromar caught the chain axe strike on his forearm, felt the teeth chew into ceramite and flesh, and drove his knife into Prasad's chest. Prasad triggered the grenade anyway. White glare filled the chapel, blinding mortals and washing helm displays in static. Coromar, already moving by heat and motion, stepped inside Prasad's guard and smashed his fist upward beneath the ruined helm. The head snapped back. Prasad laughed once. "Witnessed." Coromar broke his neck. Arkle heard the word die and added the name even while dueling another grey warrior. Prasad, slain beneath false saints. Det witnessed. The surviving smugglers finally got their signal out. It burst from the chapel Vox array in a screaming pulse, forced through storm interference by panic, stolen amplifiers, and the dying power of the base. For several heartbeats, Corcyran Secundus spoke to orbit. "Any Imperial command, this is Corcyra, hold fast. Astartes forces engaged. Loyalist codes compromised. Secessionist codes compromised. We request extraction. We request..." Castigar shot the Vox array with his last bolt shell. Coromar killed the generator with a thrown knife. The chapel went dark except for fire, muzzle flash, and the red glow of damaged armor lenses. High above, beyond dust storm and mineral interference, the signal reached the void. On the Carcharodon strike cruiser, Company Master Akamu heard it as a static, choked fragment between bursts of corrupted data. Armor runes from the surface flickered and died across the command hololith. The extraction paths were ash. Thunderhawk descent vectors failed under storm shear, active void shielding, and hostile fire. Teleport locks returned nothing stable enough to risk the flesh of the Emperor's angels. Akamu stood in silence before the display. A serf dared to ask, "My lord, do we attempt recovery?" The company master did not look at him. "Record the signals," he said. "Continue denial pattern. The red work proceeds." On the Night Hag, the same transmission clawed its way through static and entered the strategium like a dying man dragged before judgment. The executioner's commander listened once. Around him, officers and serfs waited beneath chains, hung with old skulls. The storm below swallowed beacon locks. The Carcharodon ship prowled too near for unguarded descent. The base's own shields flickered through the dust, making teleportation a gamble fit only for fools and dead men. "Their runes are failing," said a helmsman. The commander's gauntlet tightened around the haft of his sheathed axe. "Then they fight below," he said. "Orders, Lord?" A long silence followed. "Hold orbit. Break any vessel that interferes. Mark all names received." Below, in the chapel of illicit saints, the mortals who had sent the plea died without knowing they had succeeded. The executioners and Carcharodons did not stop. Faith became powder beneath their boots. Aquilus broke. False relics burned. The stolen saints watched with stone eyes as angels of death turned their chapel into a slaughterhouse and called it duty. Above Corcyran Secundus, the two hunting ships circled one another through dust-blurred void. Neither vessel fired. That restraint was not mercy. It was calculation measured in lance charge, shield harmonics, ammunition stores, atmospheric interference, and the greater slaughter burning across the maelstrom zone. The Badab War had already taught every commander the price of pride. Convoy routes bled on distant auger screens. Supply escorts crawled crippled through black space, with atmosphere venting from their flanks in silver plumes. Minefield markers flickered and vanished. Far beyond Corcyra's ash, choked gravity well. Lance fire stitched brief white scars across the dark, where other warships fought and died for oaths, tithes, names, and lies. The Carcharodon strike cruiser maintained high anchor in silence, its blackened hull turned edgewise to the dust world below. Its gun ports remained closed, but not asleep. Its auger veins tracked the night hag with predatory patience, every return filtered through layers of static rising from the planet. The machine spirit of the ship did not snarl. It waited. The night hag waited differently. She prowled on a wider orbit, engines burning hotter, weapons half unmasked beneath plated shutters. Her bridge towers were dark, except for the red glow of war stations. Chains along her command spine shivered whenever the maneuvering thrusters fired. In her strategium, serfs watched the hololithic void map with bloodless faces, while helmsmen whispered course corrections to the old vessel's angry spirit. Between the ships lay Corcyran Secundus, a useless ball of dust, metal, and forgotten treachery. Below the dust, their brothers were dying. Neither commander could reach them. The storm over the smuggler base had thickened into a continent of ash and charged mineral filth. Every descent vector bled red across auger projections. The base's own void shielding, damaged and unstable, flickered in diseased pulses through the canyon walls. Teleport locks returned malformed silhouettes, then nothing, then impossible doubles. To attempt extraction was to scatter warriors into stone, shields, open air, or the wrong side of a sealed bulkhead. Thunderhawks circled above the worst of the storm and could go no lower without becoming funeral offerings. The Carcharodon company master stood before the hololith aboard his cruiser and watched the armor runes below fail one by one. His face showed nothing. On the night hag, the executioner's commander did the same, one armored hand resting on the haft of his sheathed axe, while Death Speaker servitors recorded every fragment of Vox traffic that clawed its way up from the planet. The brothers below were beyond recall. That did not make them lost. It made them committed. The Vox Spire rose from the smuggler base like a rusted cathedral needle thrust through the throat of a corpse. It had once been an atmospheric relay, then a contraband signal tower, then a false shrine to profit and survival. Antennae clustered around its upper reaches in tangled crowns, exposed cables whipped in the storm like nerve. Cords torn from a giant. Shell holes opened its flanks to the wind, and through them the dust screamed constantly, a raw animal voice that climbed and fell around broken transmission veins. Lower down, the spire's root levels were packed with dead smugglers and shattered gun servitors, their bodies piled in corners where panic, automated defense protocols, and Astartes violence had driven them together and ended them without distinction. The Vox array still lived, not fully, not cleanly, but deep in its machine heart, signal cores remained hot, data spools remained locked, and corrupted route logs continued to pulse through the tower's dying nervous system. Loyalist interdiction markers, secessionist convoy ghosts, minefield patterns, false recall orders, ciphers wrapped inside other ciphers until truth and bait could no longer be separated. The Carcharodons came to erase it. The executioners came to seize it. Neither side understood how little of it might still matter. Neither side cared. Worthless data could still kill if carried into the wrong hands. Corrupted orders could still guide ships into ambush. A lie did not become harmless because it was broken. In war, even rot had teeth. Castigar entered the lower spire through a breach made by dead men. The entrance chamber had been defended by smugglers first, then gun thralls, then old defense lasers, then Carcharodon ambushers. Now it was a red-floored ruin where corpses lay stacked beneath tangles of cabling and shattered devotional plates. His boots crushed teeth, bolt casings, and glass beneath each step. His armor dragged at the hip. One side of his torso was sealed with blackening foam where earlier wounds had reopened. He had recovered his axe, though its haft was scarred, and its field generator coughed irregular sparks whenever awakened. Behind him came the last coherent knot of executioners he could gather. Brother Kyle walked with both hands on a breacher shield, too damaged to deserve the name. Its face was cratered by bolt impacts and scored by chain teeth, but it still held. Brother Ursus carried a combi weapon with the melter charge spent, and only a handful of bolt shells remaining. Brother Thane had lost his helm and wore a rebreather mask torn from a dead smuggler over half his face, his exposed skin blistered by heat and chemical dust. Brother Jorad limped behind them, one knee actuator locked, chain axe dragging sparks across the floor. Death Speaker Arkle came last, Crozius axe in hand, the skull helm's lenses burning through the dust. "Names," Castigar said. Arkle's voice answered at once. Vaughn, Othran, Garin, Malrek, Damas, Prasad, debt witnessed, debt unpaid. Add those above when we climb. They will be added. Castigar looked up the stairwell rising through the center of the spire. It was narrow, metal, half melted in places, caged by torn mesh and lined with relay conduits. A perfect killing throat. Grey shapes waited somewhere above. He knew it as surely as he knew the weight of his axe. "Shields first," he ordered. "No halt unless dead. No backward step unless carrying a brother's body as a weapon." Kyle gave a wet laugh through his damaged grill. "Then we climb." They climbed. The first volley came from murder slits cut into the stairwell wall 3 landings above. Carcharodon bolters, pre-sighted and disciplined, fired in short, overlapping bursts. The shells struck Kale's shield and burst across it in thunderclaps, cratering the metal, punching through in places to spit fragments into his armor. One shell blew through the shield rim and took 2 fingers from his left hand. He kept climbing. Another shell struck Jorad's knee and detonated inside the already ruined joint. The leg came apart in a spray of armor, blood and servo fluid. Jorad fell 1 step, only 1. He drove his chain axe into the stair grate, used it as a crutch, and dragged himself upright. "Forward," Castigar said. "Forward," Jorad growled. They advanced into the next ambush. Koromar watched them from above through a cracked relay lens and did not admire them. Admiration suggested distance. Distance suggested safety. He had neither. He marked their formation, their wound states, their ammunition discipline, the way they accepted damage as passage price. The executioners were not being surprised. They were buying ground with flesh. He had expected that. The Carcharodons had prepared. Accordingly, the first melter trap lay beneath the 7th landing, wired to a pressure shrine and hidden beneath the corpse of a gun servitor. Brother Ursus detected the heat signature a breath before Kyle's boot reached the trigger. "Trap," Ursus voxed. "Where?" Castigar asked. "Under the dead machine." Kyle looked down. The servitor's corpse twitched as the charge armed. Jorad shoved past them. "Move," he said. He threw himself onto the corpse. The melter charge detonated beneath him. For a heartbeat, he became light inside armor. His breastplate liquefied. The stairs beneath him sagged red-hot. His arms burned away to blackened stumps, and the rebreather mask fused into the meat of his face. Yet as his body collapsed, he still had one motion left. His chain axe flew from his dying grip, spinning end over end up the stairwell. Above, a Carcharodon leaned out to fire. The axe struck his helm at the temple. The blade did not have enough power left to cut cleanly, but momentum and weight split the faceplate inward. The grey warrior toppled from the murder slit and fell across the stairs with half his skull exposed. Arkel's voice cut through the smoke. "Jorad, slain ascending the Vox Spire, debt witnessed." "Paid in passage," Castigar said. They stepped over Jorad, while the armor still glowed. Coromar withdrew before the executioners reached the landing. He did not remain to honor their sacrifice. Honor did not hold stairwells. He activated the next sequence with a touch of his gauntlet. Antenna spars fell through the upper shaft. They came down like spears from a dead god's crown, long lengths of rusted metal severed by placed charges. One impaled Brother Ursus through the shoulder and pinned him to the stairwell wall. Another smashed Cale's shield armor side and tore open his chest plate. A third struck Castigar across the back and drove him to one knee, sparks cascading from his armor. Carcharodons fired into the chaos. Kyle rose first, shield lifted in both hands, despite the blood running from his cracked breastplate. Bolt shells punched into him. One entered his throat seal and detonated inside his upper chest. He staggered, but kept the shield high long enough for Castigar to pass beneath it. Castigar reached the murder slit and drove his axe through the wall. The power field flared as the blade bit through metal, insulation, and the Carcharodon behind it. The grey warrior's arm fell first. Then Castigar ripped the axe sideways and opened the wall enough to thrust his gauntlet through. He seized the Carcharodon by the gorget and slammed him face first into the cut metal edge until helm, skull, and lens fragments burst outward. Above, Coromar felt the line bend, but not break. "Withdraw to the transmitter nave," he voxed. Only static answered. He repeated the command in High Gothic. Still nothing. His brothers were either dead, engaged, or beyond the reach of signal. That simplified the field. He moved alone now, placing his last remote charge beneath a cable cradle and dragging two ancient bolters into alignment at the next stair turn. They had been found in a smuggler arms cache, relic weapons stolen from some battlefield and never properly appeased. Their machine spirits were stubborn, resentful things. Coromar forced them into obedience with a hard right and a direct data spike. They would fire once, perhaps twice, before jamming. Once might be enough. The executioners came up through smoke, wounded beyond sane continuation. Castigar led now, because the shield wall was gone. Kyle had died below, still standing behind his ruined shield until a Carcharodon blade found his spine. Ursus had torn himself free of the antenna spar and continued climbing with one arm hanging useless at his side. Thane had taken Cale's shield remnant and carried it like a door ripped from a burning bunker. Arkel came beside Castigar, chanting names into the storm roar. The relic bolters fired. Thane vanished from the waist up as both shells struck the shield remnant and detonated through it. His legs continued climbing for one step before collapsing. Ursus fired his combi bolter at the muzzle flash and killed one of the ancient weapons. Then a Carcharodon emerged from the smoke and took his head with a chain blade stroke. Castigar hurled his axe. It spun through the stairwell, struck the Carcharodon in the chest, and drove him backward into the second relic. Bolter as it fired. The shell detonated inside both weapon and warrior, filling the landing with metal shards and grey blood. Castigar climbed through the debris and recovered his axe. The spire's upper levels were worse. There were no proper rooms now, only platforms, cable nests, broken transmission shrines, and open gaps where the wind came screaming through. Dust stormlight flashed yellow and red through rents in the walls. Antennae swayed overhead, groaning like dying trees. Fire had taken several relay banks below, and smoke climbed after the warriors, hot and black. Harvester Sava waited in the transmitter nave. He had prepared no grand ambush. There had been no time. He stood amid the relay engines with his narthecium extended, his left leg damaged, his armor sealed poorly where Castigar had wounded him before. 3 progenoid canisters remained mag-locked to his belt, his black lenses fixed on Castigar as the executioner stepped onto the platform. Arkle moved to advance. Castigar raised one hand. "No," he said. "This one is mine." The Death Speaker paused, then inclined his skull helm. "Witnessed." Sava's voice came through the open Vox, quiet and cold. "You are command path." Castigar lifted his axe. "And you are butcher debt. I preserved what was ours. You opened Garen from throat to gut. He interfered." Castigar smiled behind his broken faceplate. "So will I." They met beneath the shrieking antennae. Sava fought like a surgeon carving away a problem. No wasted blows, no challenges, no rage. His reductor snapped at armor seals, seeking soft points with obscene precision. His surgical blade cut through fiber bundles and tendons, not plate. He moved inside the heavier arc of Castigar's axe, forcing the executioner to turn, to guard, to pay for every attempt at a killing stroke. Castigar fought like an execution block given limbs. His axe blows broke consoles, severed cables, split relay housings, and drove Sava back step by step. When Sava cut his forearm seal, Castigar punched him with the same arm. When the reductor bit into his side and opened old wounds beneath the ribs, he trapped Sava's wrist beneath his elbow and drove a knee into the apothecary's damaged leg. The crack of ceramite and bone merged with the shriek of the storm. Sava withdrew a half pace and fired his bolt pistol. The shell struck Castigar in the side, where the armor was already open. It detonated shallow, ripping through plate, flesh, and muscle. Castigar staggered, blood spraying against a relay shrine. His helm display went red. One lung flooded. His left hand spasmed open. Sava came in for the kill. Castigar dropped the axe. The apothecary's reductor rose for his throat. Castigar caught the weapon arm with both hands and headbutted Sava's faceplate. Once, the lenses cracked. Twice, the shark tooth markings split. Sava drove a blade into Castigar's abdomen seal and twisted. Castigar headbutted him again, harder, until the faceplate caved inward with a wet crunch of breaking bone and lens glass. Sava did not cry out. Even with his face ruined behind the helm, he reached for the canisters at his belt. Castigar found a broken combat blade on the platform, perhaps dropped by a dead brother, perhaps torn from some forgotten corpse below. He drove it upward beneath Sava's chin, through the cracked helm seal, into the skull. The apothecary froze. His fingers brushed one progenoid canister, then stopped. Castigar held him there until the body slackened. He ripped the blade free and let Sava fall among the burning relay cables. Fire spread across the transmitter nave, feeding on insulation, oil, and ancient dust. One of the progenoid canisters rolled loose from Sava's belt, its seal blinking amber. Flames licked toward it. Arkle watched from the stairwell, wounded and silent. Castigar looked at the canister. For a breath, hatred offered him an easy answer. Let the fire take it. Let the grey ghosts lose one more remnant. Let their silence end in ash. He stepped forward, picked up the canister, and threw it clear of the flames into a hollow beneath a fallen relay block. Arkle said nothing. Castigar's voice was rough with blood. Gene seed is not plunder. No, Arkle said. It is not. Across the burning nave, through smoke and flickering ruin, Koromar saw him. He had entered through an upper maintenance hatch with his blade drawn, ready to strike the command path, while the apothecary kept him fixed. He saw Sava dead. He saw Castigar bleeding. He saw the progenoid canister spared from fire, by an enemy who had every reason to destroy it. For half a heartbeat, Coromar hesitated. Not mercy, not kinship. Something colder, harder, and almost like respect. Then the spire collapsed. The charge Coromar had planted below finally found the wounded support spine. Or perhaps the fire reached old munitions. Or perhaps the Vox Spire, burdened by too much damage, simply decided to die. The transmitter nave split beneath them. Antennae tore free and fell outward into the storm. The central mast buckled with a shriek that drowned even the wind. Castigar lunged for his axe. Coromar lunged for Castigar. The floor vanished between them. Both warriors fell into the burning levels below as the Vox Spire came apart around them, carrying fire, dead brothers, corrupted data, and the last screams of the machine spirit down into the dark. Coromar woke beneath a mountain of dead metal. For several breaths, he did not understand that he still lived. There was no shape to the world, no corridor, no vault, no spire, only blackness, pressure, pain, and the taste of his own blood misting the inside of his helm. His armor fed him emergency stimulants through the black carapace, cold needles of fire sinking into nerve ports along his spine. Damage runes crawled across his broken display, multiplying, contradicting, fading, returning. Left pauldron locked, right vambrace compromised, gorget seal cracked, secondary heart irregular, primary heart stable, respiratory intake fouled, pain suppression active. He tried to move. The wreckage answered by grinding down harder. A collapsed antenna spar pinned his torso across the chest, its twisted length driven between the plates of his armor and the shattered relay deck beneath him. Cables hung everywhere, some dead, some sparking. A brother dangled from them above, impaled through the abdomen by a support strut, grey armor blackened by fire. His helm had been torn away in the fall. Dust had settled over his open face, filling his mouth, eyes, and the torn cavity where half his skull had been. Another Carcharodon lay embedded in the buckled decking nearby, driven into the metal from shoulder to hip by the collapse, as if the spire had tried to swallow him and failed to finish the meal. Wind screamed through the broken chamber. It carried dust, ash, and powdered bone. It hissed across Coromar's armor and gathered in the seams of the dead. The air glowed a dim furnace red from fires burning below. Somewhere distant, metal cried as the remains of the Vox Spire shifted in the storm. Coromar braced both hands against the spar. His first attempt failed. Pain flared white across his vision. His armor locked and then unlocked, obeying a command older than mercy. He exhaled once, slowly. The breath rasped through blood in his throat. Then he pushed again. The spar rose by the width of a blade. He dragged himself beneath it, ceramite scraping across torn deck plates, and rolled onto his side. His left arm refused him. He struck the elbow joint against the floor until the servo bundle reset with a crack like breaking bone. The arm moved again. Good enough. He rose to one knee among the dead. There were no squad runes left that he trusted. Every signal on his display was a ghost or a lie. Some flickered where no living warrior could stand. Some marked brothers he had seen die. The spire's ruin had turned the world into static and red light. Coromar looked at the brother hanging from the cables. He reached up, caught the warrior's belt, and pulled the corpse down with a wet tear of metal and flesh. The body fell heavily at his feet. The gene seed could not be recovered. The chest was burned open and crushed. The head was ruin. The body had already given all it could give. Coromar took the dead brother's combat blade. He did not speak aright, not aloud. Sound was for the living. Elsewhere in the broken spire, Castigar came back to himself by drowning. His flooded lungs spasmed inside him. He coughed, and the inside of his helm sprayed dark across the cracked lenses. For a moment his display died, leaving him blind except for the red glow leaking through fractures in the faceplate. Then the runes returned in a trembling wash. Blood loss severe, left hand crushed, ribcage compromised, respiratory, Failure partial. Armor spirit unstable. Weapon link severed. He laughed once, and the sound became a cough. He lay half buried beneath relay plating, his axe trapped somewhere beyond reach. His left hand was folded against itself, fingers broken inside the gauntlet, the ceramite mangled around the flesh. He could not feel the smallest two fingers at all. That offended him less than the flooded lung. A warrior could kill with one hand. A warrior required breath, only because flesh was arrogant enough to demand it. He tore a length of oath chain from his chest. The links had carried the names of brothers dead before Corcyra. It would carry another duty now. With his right hand and the broken pressure of the left, Castigar bound the chain around his side where the Carcharodon Apothecary had opened him. He pulled until the links bit through cracked armor and into the wound beneath. Blood welled through the gaps. He pulled tighter. Pain cleared his thoughts. He hooked the chain around a torn plate ridge and locked it in place. Then he stood. His helm display flickered. The world lurched. He steadied himself with one gauntlet against the wall, leaving a red print on dust-blackened metal. There was no order to receive, no withdrawal to obey, no intact squad to gather. There was only the debt. He found his axe 10 paces away, haft cracked, blade half buried in a dead servitor's torso. The machine had been crushed flat by the fall, but its gun arms still twitched, empty barrels clicking. Castigar put a boot on its head and tore the axe free. The field generator coughed, flared, died, then flared again. "Good," he rasped. The weapon did not answer. The base had become a language of wounds. In one corridor, a Carcharodon had dragged blood-slick fingers across the wall, marking kill glyphs in red-black arcs that curved like teeth around the names of places no imperial chart remembered. Each symbol was simple, precise, severe. A tally, a passage, a statement that prey had been found and opened. Farther on, the executioners answered in their own tongue. Severed helms were nailed to support pillars with broken blades, spike rods and lengths of rebar. Grey helms, smuggler helms, gun thrall skull housings. One Carcharodon faceplate, split down the center, hung beneath an oath chain looped around its throat. Beneath it, cut into the pillar by chain axe teeth, was a single mark of witnessed debt. The base spoke from wall to wall, blood scrimshaw, nailed trophies, silence, challenge, two cultures of sanctioned atrocity, writing their truths in meat and armor, because no living judge remained to hear them. The surviving warriors were no longer armies. They were fragments moving through ruins, pairs, solitary hunters, dying brothers too stubborn to become corpses before taking another life with them. Every encounter had weight now. There were no faceless gun lines, no distant volleys. Every kill required hands, names, and the hateful intimacy of breath inside broken helms. Brother Have of the Carcharodons had lost both legs beneath the collapse of the eastern stairwell. His lower body ended in a ragged mass of ruptured armor, severed black carapace plugs, and meat sealed badly by failing foam. He had dragged himself for long minutes through dust with a combat knife in each hand, leaving a wide, dark trail behind him. His helm was gone. His face was expressionless beneath the ash, though pain shook his arms with each movement. Around him lay a heap of corpses, where the floor had buckled and dumped the dead into a shallow pit. He buried himself beneath them as best he could, not from fear, from patience. The executioner came limping through the pit, with a bolt pistol empty in one hand and a short axe in the other. His armor bore no name visible beneath the dust. His right knee was locked. His left shoulder smoked from a melter graze. He stepped over the corpses, scanning ahead, not below. Have waited until the warrior's boot passed his face. Then he struck. The knife went into the femoral seal at the inner thigh, where ceramite met flexible armor, and sacred flesh lay close beneath. Have drove it into the hilt and cut outward with both hands. Blood exploded over his face. The executioner roared and staggered, swinging the axe down. The blow missed Have's head by a finger's width and split a corpse beside him. Have cut again, deeper. The executioner fell to one knee, blood pumping from the opened seal in hard pulses. Have reached for the second knife. The executioner brought his boot down. It struck Have's chest and crushed him against the floor. The first impact caved the breastplate inward. The second broke ribs and organ mass. The third burst the Carcharodon's mouth open with blood. Have still held the knife. He tried to lift it. The executioner's next stomp turned the hand to red pulp. Then the executioner collapsed backward, the femoral wound emptying him faster than his armor could seal. They lay facing each other in the dust, both still breathing for a little while. The executioner laughed softly. Have did not. The last thing either saw was the other refusing to die first. Death Speaker Arkle found Castigar beneath the split transit arch leading away from the fallen spire. Arkle had become a ruin that moved. One lens of his skull helm was dark, the other burned red and unfocused. His Crozius axe had broken during the collapse. The blade head was gone, lost somewhere below, leaving him with a haft of blackened metal wrapped in oath script and clotted skin. He used it as a club, and the haft had already split another warrior's helm by the time he reached Castigar. "Castigar," Arkle said. "Death Speaker. You still stand. So do you. Not well. Well enough." Arkle tilted his helm, listening to something only his damaged systems heard. Root fragments indicate an upper breach beyond the spire remains. If the storm clears, if the shields fail, if the dead machines sleep, a withdrawal may become possible. Castigar looked toward the lower dark. Somewhere beneath them, Carcharodon signals flickered and died. Somewhere ahead, the false data core still breathed its lies through broken conduits. "No." Arkle was silent for a moment. "I order you to withdraw if the route opens," the Death Speaker said. Castigar's grip tightened on his axe. "Then witness my refusal." The broken helm stared at him. "A brother who leaves a worthy killing ground unfinished shames the dead," Castigar said. "We have names unpaid." Arkle's head inclined by the smallest degree. "Good," he said. The approval carried more weight than comfort ever could. Arkle turned and struck his broken Crozius haft against Castigar's breastplate. Once. A dull, final sound. "Then we go down." Coromar received the transmission while kneeling beside a ruptured relay core. He had climbed through the spire's broken lower spine and found a half-living channel still feeding through the fallen antenna roots. The signal from orbit came in fragments, carved into static by storm, metal, shielding, and the interference of the ancient installation beneath the base. Coromar, extraction impossible, surface denial active, mission parameter revision, data recovery secondary, enemy denial primary, no asset loss beyond acceptable red tithe threshold, proceed. The voice vanished into a wash of static. Coromar listened until there was nothing left. Enemy denial primary, extraction impossible, data recovery secondary. In another chapter, such words might have meant abandonment. In another soul, they might have been heard as doom. To Coromar, they were permission. The mission had shed unnecessary flesh. No return was required. No proof was required. No witness was required. The executioners could not leave. The data could not leave. If the Carcharodons died achieving those truths, the red tithe would be paid in full. He reached to his armor and tore away 3 damaged purity seals. Their script burned, their wax cracked and blackened. They had been placed before the descent by hands that were likely dead now. He wrapped the strips around the grip of his stolen combat blade and tightened them until the parchment darkened with blood from his gauntlet. "For the Void Father," he said. His voice sounded strange in the empty chamber. Too loud. He did not speak again. Near the reactor throat, 2 Astartes lay trapped beneath the same fallen beam. One wore grey, one wore gunmetal. The beam had crushed the Carcharodon across the hips and pinned the executioner through the lower legs. Both had lost their helms. Their faces were inches apart, across a floor of dust and broken glass. Heat shimmered around them. The reactor's failing pulse beat through the metal beneath their bodies, slow and feverish. The executioner's face was flensed open along one side, exposing teeth and cheekbone. He breathed in wet clicks. "Why?" he asked. The Carcharodon turned black eyes toward him. The executioner swallowed blood. "Why did you come back from the dark?" For a time there was only the reactor pulse and the hiss of dust. "To feed the war," the Carcharodon said. The executioner smiled with half a mouth. "Then choke on it." He reached for the Carcharodon's throat with one broken hand. The Carcharodon reached for his eyes. Pinned beneath the same beam, dying by the same heat, they tried to kill each other with the last strength in their fingers. The reactor began to fail in earnest. Its warnings did not sound like alarms anymore. The old sirens had burned out or been crushed. Instead, the base filled with a growing pressure, a deepening groan that moved through walls, floors, bones, and armor. Heat rose from below in waves. Dust turned black, then red, then glassy, where the temperature climbed near open conduits. In the lower passages, footprints became molten-edged impressions. Loose teeth from the dead fused into shining lumps with shell casings and powdered bone. Armor systems overheated. Cooling runes flashed warning. Internal gel layers boiled in damaged sections of plate. Flesh cooked where armor had cracked and sealed again over wounds. Men who were not Astartes died without drama now, simply curling where they fell as heat emptied them. Servitors burst as their old fluids expanded inside metal housings. Cables softened. Lumen strips sagged from walls like wax. Corcyra's grave was becoming an oven. If the warriors did not kill one another first, the base would finish what they had begun. Arkle found the final vault chamber by following the lies. The false signal engine did not speak in words. It pulsed through the walls, through broken Vox conduits, through dead auger channels and cracked command lines. Each pulse carried fragments of old war, loyalist clearance tags, secessionist route markers, convoy recalls, minefield codes, threat priorities, obsolete authentication seals, names of ships long dead, orders from commanders whose bones had been dust before the Badab War began. The final chamber lay beyond a half-melted pressure gate. Arkle battered it open with the broken haft of his Crozius, strike after strike, until the locking teeth sheared away. Castigar stood behind him, axe ready, breathing hard through a flooded lung. Two other executioners had joined them on the descent, both wounded, both silent now. Silence had finally come for them too, though it sat poorly on their shoulders. The gate opened inward. The chamber beyond was vast and circular, descending into a pit of cogitator stacks and black metal ribs. At its center rose the original engine. It was not grand in the way of a cathedral altar. It was not demonic. No eyes opened in its metal. No mouths whispered from the warp. It was worse for being mundane. A machine built to obey, broken by centuries, fed corrupted inputs, left to interpret war through dead protocols and decayed law. Its brass casings were split. Its crystal cores pulsed with sickly green light. Its data spools turned and turned and turned, scraping out the same lies into the dark. Arkle stepped closer. His helm received a burst of raw transmission. Executioners marked hostile under one code. Carcharodons marked hostile under another. Both marked valid Imperial assets under older seals. Both marked for interception. Both marked for denial. The Death Speaker listened. Slowly, the truth arranged itself before him like a skull cleaned of flesh. There may have been no living hand behind it. No prince clever enough. No enemy admiral. No assassin's lure. No sorcerer laughing behind a veil. The dead machine had heard war in the heavens, tasted transponder blood, and answered with ancient contradiction. It had called killers into the same wound, because it could no longer tell command from corruption, loyalty from treason, brother from target. The battle may have been meaningless. Castigar saw the Death Speaker grow still. "What is it?" he asked. Arkell looked upon the engine. Around him, the names of the dead weighed more than the heat, more than the pain, more than the world collapsing over their heads. For a moment, beneath the broken skull helm, he understood the obscenity. Then he smiled. Meaning was irrelevant. Only the dead required accounting. The chamber beneath Corcyran Secundus was a cathedral built for a god that had never breathed. No altar stood at its center. No saint watched from carved stone. No candle guttered in scented oil. No hymn rose from mortal throats. Instead, there were cogitators. They climbed from the floor in tiered banks of brass, black iron and frost-veined crystal, vast enough to vanish into the smoke-filled gloom above. Data stacks rose like organ pipes in a dead basilica. Cables hung from the vaulted ceiling in thick loops, swaying gently in the heat wash from below, like nooses waiting for condemned giants. Dead lumen globes dangled between them, most shattered, some still pulsing with a sick green glow. The floor was not marble, but plasteel plating worn smooth by centuries of hidden vibration. The walls were ribbed with conduits, warded with old imperial machine script, and stained where coolant, dust and blood had mingled into black lacquer. At the heart of the cathedral, the false signal engine turned. It was not beautiful. It was not demonic. It was not adorned with 8-pointed stars, or crawling flesh, or screaming faces pressed from the immaterium into metal. That would have been simpler. That would have given the warriors a clean enemy to hate. The machine was imperial, obsolete, damaged, blindly loyal to dead instructions. Its casing bore a half-erased aquila, almost hidden beneath corrosion and dust. Its cogitator shrines clicked and rotated around a central logic column made from layered brass rings and cracked crystal cores. Servo skulls, long dead, hung from umbilical cables in a crown around it. Parchment spools fed endlessly through reader jaws, dragging brittle strips of faded orders across optic lenses that still glowed with weak red light. The engine had been speaking for centuries. Threat identifiers, convoy ghosts, false target priorities, minefield warnings that pointed to empty void, safe routes that ended in ambush, loyalist clearance keys cross-marked as hostile, secessionist transponder ghosts granted passage for 3 breaths before being marked for denial. Signals looped into signals, lies wrapped around obsolete truths, every pulse cast upward through the smuggler base and into the storm like hooks baited for warships. It had not hated the Carcharodons. It had not hated the executioners. It had simply obeyed. Death Speaker Arkell stood before the engine and listened to the machine confess without shame. His skull helm was cracked across one brow. One lens was dead. The other flickered as data streamed through damaged receivers. He had forced a cable from the engine into his vambrace port, and the connection made his armor twitch as though something cold and insectile crawled through its spirit. The machine fed him fragments in broken procession. Carcharodon's Astra, valid imperial asset, outer dark interdiction writ, clearance archaic, priority hostile under maelstrom containment subcode, executioners, valid Adeptus Astartes lineage, Badab theatre irregular, clearance contested, priority hostile under secessionist collusion index, smuggler compact, asset compromised, preserve data shrine, deny all unverified forces, draw armed authority, maintain signal integrity. Arkell saw the pattern through static and pain, not treachery as men sang it, not a traitor prince pulling chains from his throne, not a sorcerer whispering through the walls, not an assassin smiling in a distant ship. Bureaucracy, decay, dead orders, rotten war logic. The Imperium's own forgotten machinery had tasted transponder blood in orbit and summoned killers into the same throat. It had named both chapters enemy and asset in the same breath. It had fed each side enough truth to sharpen suspicion and enough falsehood to make withdrawal dishonor. The Corcyran Massacre had not needed malice. The Imperium's rot had been sufficient. Castigar came to stand beside him, axe low, one side of his armor sealed with oath chain and clotted blood. 4 executioners remained with him. Brother Ursus, one arm hanging useless, but still gripping a bolt pistol in the other hand. Brother Halvek, whose helm had been burned smooth by plasma heat, leaving only one slit of red lens. Brother Routh, limping, chain-axe teeth almost gone. Brother Selin, silent now, shield arm broken, combat knife held reverse grip in his remaining fist. 4 warriors where a force had stood. Castigar looked upon the engine. "Speak plainly." Arkell pulled the cable free from his vambrace. Sparks crawled across his gauntlet. "The machine is loyal." Ursus made a sound that might have been laughter. "To whom?" "To orders too old to matter." Castigar stared at the central logic column. Did it call them? It called all. It marked all. It condemned all. And the grey ghosts. Condemned as we are. Castigar's breathing rasped through his damaged helm. Then the machine lies. The machine obeys. That is worse. Arkell turned his skull face toward him. Yes. From the far archway, grey armor emerged. Coromar came first, moving through hanging cables and drifting ash with his blade held low. 3 Carcharodons followed. One carried a bolter with only a partial magazine and a cracked sighting rail. Another held a chain blade whose teeth moved in uneven, coughing jerks. The last had no ranged weapon at all and bore 2 knives taken from the dead. Their armor was scorched, dented, and blood-darkened. Their tooth markings were almost invisible beneath dust and smoke. They did not speak. Castigar lifted his axe. The executioners spread without command. Arkell stepped between them and the engine, broken Crozius haft in hand, its missing blade making it no less a weapon. The dead lumen globe swayed overhead. The signal engine clicked and turned, and whispered its blind judgments into the heat. For the first time since the vault throat, both sides could see enough to understand. They could stop. The truth lay naked between them, written in data ghosts and dead protocols. No living hand had to be punished. No treasure remained worth the blood already paid. The routes were corrupted. The codes were contradictory. The engine's records might be too degraded to save, too poisonous to use, too unstable to trust. Everything both forces had fought to seize or erase might already have been worthless before the first drop pod burned through the storm. They could stop. No one lowered a weapon. The executioners could not leave blood debt unpaid. Their brothers had died beneath grey blades, in vault dark, in flame, under collapsing stone, with names already carried by Arkell's helm. To withdraw now would make the tally a mockery. The Carcharodons could not allow armed secessionists to depart. Oath-bound or not, honourable or not, brother blood or not, the executioners stood on the wrong side of the writ, and the mission had become enemy denial. Both chapters were perfectly themselves. That was why they were doomed. Arkell raised the broken Crozius haft and struck it once against the floor. The sound echoed through the Cogitator Cathedral. Single combat, he said. One warrior, one judgment. Possession of this vault by witnessed right. Coromar regarded him through cracked black lenses. No. The answer was so quiet, the cathedral seemed to lean closer to hear it. Arkell's helm tilted. You refuse right. Coromar's voice carried the cold formality of High Gothic, each syllable stripped of heat. Mission parameters require annihilation. Enemy withdrawal is denied. Ritual is irrelevant. Castigar laughed. It was not mirth. It was blood in the throat shaped into contempt. Honest cowardice, he said. At last, the shark speaks plain. Coromar raised his bolter and opened fire. The cathedral vanished beneath thunder. The first shell struck Brother Halvek's chest and detonated under the breastplate, blowing his back open in a fan of bone, armor fiber, and cooked lung. Halvek fell against a memory altar, hard enough to crack the stone slab, and remained there, pinned by the ruin of his own body. The executioners answered with their last bolts. Ursus fired 3 shots before his pistol clicked empty. One punched through a Carcharodon's knee, exploding the joint backward and dropping the warrior hard. The grey warrior crawled forward anyway, dragging his ruined leg behind him, knife already out. Data stacks erupted. Bolt shells tore into logic columns, detonating crystal cores and brass housings. Data scrolls burned in sheets, parchment curling into black flakes as heat washed over the chamber. Servitor skulls hanging above the engine burst under pressure waves, their ancient bone casings popping open and raining teeth, lens glass and wire nests across the fighting below. One memory altar shattered when Brother Routh drove a Carcharodon into it, shoulder first. The impact cracked stone and ceramite together, leaving both warriors staggering in a cloud of powdered scripture. Coromar moved toward Arkul. Castigar tried to intercept him. A Carcharodon with a cracked helm slammed into Castigar from the side, driving both of them across the blood-slick floor. Castigar's axe haft struck the ground and spun away. The Carcharodon's chainblade was dead, so he used it as a hook, catching Castigar beneath the gorget and wrenching him down. Castigar smashed his damaged left gauntlet into the warrior's helm. The crushed hand screamed inside the plate. He struck again. The faceplate cracked, but held. The Carcharodon head-butted him. Castigar's vision flashed black. He felt teeth loosen inside his own mouth. He answered by seizing the grey warrior's helm with both hands and ripping. Damaged locks tore free. Neck seals split. The helm came away with skin and cable trailing from it. The face beneath was pale, expressionless, one eye already ruptured from earlier wounds. Castigar drove both thumbs into the remaining eyes. This time the Carcharodon made a sound, not a scream, a wet exhalation, more animal than voice. Castigar pressed deeper, thumbs breaking through soft tissue into the sockets, until he felt bone give beneath the pressure. The Carcharodon's hands found Castigar's wrist and pulled it toward his mouth. Teeth closed around the wrist seal where the gauntlet had split. He bit down with transhuman strength, tearing through flexible armor, flesh and tendon. Castigar snarled as 2 fingers went numb, then came away in the dying warrior's mouth. The Carcharodon died biting. Castigar wrenched his mangled hand free and rose with blood pouring from the torn seal. The grey warrior's teeth remained embedded in the armor around his wrist. "Counted," he growled. Across the chamber, Arkul and Coromar met beneath the hanging cables. The Death Speaker swung the broken Crozius haft with both hands. It struck Coromar's shoulder and shattered a pauldron already weakened by battle. Coromar staggered, then stepped inside the next swing and drove his blade into Arkul's side. The knife slid between plates and found meat. Arkul trapped the arm against his body and brought his helm down into Coromar's faceplate. Once, twice. The third blow cracked Coromar's remaining good lens. "Name," Arkul demanded. Coromar twisted the blade. Blood ran down Arkul's thigh in black streams. "Name yourself, Kinslayer." Coromar said nothing. Arkul struck him with the haft again, this time across the helm, hard enough to split the shark tooth markings and expose one black eye behind fractured glass. Coromar released the trapped knife, caught the Crozius haft with both hands, and drove his knee into Arkul's wounded side. The Death Speaker did not fall. He hooked one arm around Coromar's neck and dragged him closer, trying to crush the Carcharodon's throat with the broken haft. "You will be witnessed," Arkul said. Coromar reached up with his free hand and tore away the broken half of Arkul's helm. The skull face came loose in fragments, exposing the ruined warrior beneath. Arkul's face was grey with blood loss, one eye swollen shut, the other bright with terrible satisfaction. His teeth were red. His lips drew back in something that was almost a smile. Coromar seized him by the jaw and drove the knife up beneath the chin. Arkul's head snapped back. The blade went into the hilt, through tongue, palate, and brain. Still the Death Speaker's hands closed around Koromar's gorget. Still he laughed. Blood poured from his mouth and down the blade. The sound became a choking growl, then a wet rattle, but the laughter remained inside it. His helm's broken transmitter sparked at his belt, still slaved to Castigar's armor. The tally, the names, the last record of the dead, all of it burst through a tight beam into the Taker's failing systems. Castigar froze as the names filled his helm. Vaughn, Othran, Garin, Malrek, Damas, Prasad, Yorad, Kael, Halvek, Orsus pending, Routh pending, Selen pending, Arkul recording. The Death Speaker looked past Koromar toward Castigar. His final words came mangled by the blade through his skull. "Count them yourself, Taker." Then he died standing, held upright only by Koromar's knife and his own refusal to fall. Koromar tore the blade free. Arkul collapsed at last. The false signal engine died by accident. No warrior turned to destroy it. No oath was sworn over its ruin. No charge was placed with reverent intent. Its end came because the battle crashed through it. Brother Routh, locked chest to chest with a Carcharodon, whose name no one living would ever know, slammed backward into the central logic column. The Carcharodon had a knife buried under Routh's ribs. Routh had his chain axe teeth lodged in the Carcharodon's hip. They struck the engine together. Brass rings buckled, crystal cores fractured. Data spools snapped free and lashed wildly through the air. A bolt shell fired by Selen missed its target and punched into the exposed heart of the machine. The shell detonated inside the logic core. Light filled the cathedral, green and white and red, strobing through dust and blood. The engine screamed in Binharik, in obsolete clearance codes, in half-formed convoy orders, in threat identifiers addressed to ships dead for centuries. Its parchment feeds caught fire. Its brass rings spun too fast, shearing their own teeth apart. Servo skulls dropped from their cables and shattered on the floor. The aquila on the central casing split down the middle and fell away in two blackened halves. The truth of Corcyran Secundus burned with it. The records died. The conflicting clearances died. The proof that decay and dead law had summoned two brotherhoods into mutual ruin died. Later, if anyone came, they would find only fragments, enough to accuse, not enough to understand, enough to bury, enough to misread. The Cogitator Cathedral began to collapse. The ceiling cables snapped one by one. Dead lumen globes fell and burst. Memory altars cracked apart. Heat surged up from the reactor throat below, turning ash into sparks and blood into steam. The floor buckled around the engine pit. Routh vanished with the Carcharodon he still held, both of them dropping into the burning machinery beneath. Only a handful remained. Castigar stood amid the wreckage, one hand ruined, one lung drowning, axe recovered and hanging low. Brother Selen crawled behind him, dragging his broken shield and reloading a pistol with fingers that would not stop shaking. Orsus knelt against a shattered data stack, trying to rise with only one arm, and hatred enough to replace the other. Koromar stood across from them, blade wrapped in torn purity seals, one lens gone, armor open at the side, blood running in steady lines down his greaves. Behind him, one Carcharodon staggered upright with a bolter held in both hands, its magazine almost spent. Another crawled through burning parchment, legs useless, knife clenched between his teeth. The cathedral groaned around them. For a heartbeat, Castigar and Koromar saw each other clearly through the smoke, across the corpse of the engine that had lied them all into hell. No words passed between them. The last brothers of both chapters crawled, staggered, and reloaded with shaking gauntlets. The war had no truth left, only targets. Silence came first. It settled after the false signal engine died, after the last logic cores cracked and the last parchment spools burned, after the Cogitator Cathedral filled with green fire and black smoke and the stink of cooked machine oil. For a little while, no bolter barked, no chain axe screamed, No oath was shouted into the dark. The surviving warriors stood, knelt, crawled or leaned against broken stone, too damaged even to spend hatred quickly. The silence was not peace. It was the breath before another blow. Coromar stood beneath a rain of ash and burning data scrolls, one black lens gone, the other flickering between red damage runes and the heat ghosts of enemies. His armor had locked twice since the cathedral began to collapse. He had forced it open both times through pain, will, and the old familiarity of a warrior who had long ago ceased expecting his war plate to remain whole. His left side was open from rib to hip, where earlier strikes had worried the same wound wider. Blood ran down his greave and steamed when it touched the hot floor. Across the cathedral, Castigar lowered his axe and breathed like a drowning animal. The executioner's left hand was a ruin. 2 fingers were gone, bitten away at the wrist seal by a dying Carcharodon. The exposed flesh smoked where hot dust settled into it. His side was bound in oath chain. Every breath came with a wet scrape from the lung that had filled and refused to empty. His helm lenses glitched, went dark, returned, and painted enemies where only corpses lay. Between them, the last brothers moved. Brother Selen, or perhaps Prasad, according to the corrupted rune that flickered across Castigar's display, dragged himself upright beside a shattered memory altar. His helm was gone. Half his face had been taken by a chain blade in the cathedral's final exchange, from brow to jaw, leaving one eye exposed and blind white, teeth visible through torn cheek meat, and a strip of scalp hanging wet against his gorget. He still held a combat blade. He did not know where the enemy stood until Castigar told him. "Left," Castigar voxed. The warrior turned left. A Carcharodon came from the smoke, chain blade sputtering, its teeth clogged with armor splinters and meat. Selen met him by sound alone. The first strike opened the executioner's remaining cheek. The second scraped across his chest. Castigar's voice guided him, each command a nail driven into the dark. High. Selen ducked beneath a killing blow and rammed his blade into the Carcharodon's hip seal. Close. He obeyed, wrapping both arms around the grey warrior's torso. Now. Selen drove forward. The 2 Astartes crashed through the shattered remains of a cogitator screen and into the reactor vent beyond it. White fire took them. Not flame, not as men knew flame, but a furnace roar of escaped plasma heat. The Carcharodon's armor glowed first. Selen's ruined face blackened to the bone. Both vanished into the light without sound, locked together until the vent swallowed them whole. Castigar watched the white glare fade. Witnessed, he said, though Arkell was dead, and no death speaker remained to answer. On the opposite side of the collapsing cathedral, Coromar's last brother held the corridor alone. He had no ammunition. His bolter had jammed, cleared, jammed again, and finally died when the feed mechanism cracked under impact. He used the weapon as a mace, both hands around the casing, swinging it with the steady brutality of a warrior who had forgotten fatigue because death had become too near for such indulgence. 2 executioners came at him through a passage lined with burning cables. The first took the broken bolter across the helm and staggered. The second drove a knife into the Carcharodon's abdomen. The grey warrior headbutted him, broke his faceplate, and hammered the dead bolter down until the executioner's helm split. The first recovered and struck him in the chest with both fists. Once, twice. On the third blow, the Carcharodon's ribcage collapsed inward beneath the cracked breastplate. His body folded around the damage, black blood pouring from his mouth grill. Still, he did not fall. He let the broken bolter drop. His hand found the last crack grenade at his belt. The executioners saw the motion. One tried to step back. The other seized him, perhaps to stop him, perhaps to finish him. The Carcharodon pressed the grenade against his own chest and activated it. The blast filled the corridor with a hard white concussion. Armor fragments punched through the walls. The 3 bodies became one collision of ceramite, bone and fire, hurled down the passage and slammed into the cathedral floor in pieces too ruined to name. Koromar felt the death through the deck. No rune marked it. No voice confirmed it. He knew. Last brother gone. Mission continued. The next wave came with impact. Castigar crossed the cathedral through the smoke, axe in hand, each step dragging sparks from the broken floor. Koromar moved to meet him, chainblade taken from a dead warrior clenched in both hands. The weapon was damaged, motor coughing, teeth uneven, but it still had weight and edge enough to matter. There was no challenge, no right, no witness left worthy of the word. They struck each other beneath the dead lumen globes as the ceiling fell around them. Axe met chainblade with a crash that shook loose more ash from above. Koromar turned the first blow aside and drove his shoulder into Castigar's chest. Castigar answered with a headbutt that cracked Koromar's remaining lens. Koromar struck low, dead chain teeth scraping across Castigar's hip wound. Castigar kicked him in the knee, hard enough to buckle the joint plating and force the Carcharodon sideways. They fought slower than either would have fought at the battle's beginning. Slower and worse. There was no clean speed left in them. Power armor limped. Auto senses failed. Weapons dragged fractions behind intent. Each motion carried the cost of broken ribs, torn muscle, cooked nerves, and blood loss. Yet every blow still had the strength to kill mortal men by the dozen. They were reduced to fundamentals: hate, training, bone, will, the stubborn machinery of transhuman bodies refusing the laws that governed lesser flesh. Castigar's axe hooked beneath Koromar's pauldron and tore it away. Koromar drove the chain blade into Castigar's thigh and let the teeth chew until the motor screamed. Castigar struck him with the axe haft, not the blade, cracking the side of his helm. Koromar bit through the torn seal at Castigar's wrist, tearing flesh around the already ruined gauntlet. Castigar punched him in the throat and felt something give beneath the gorget. They crashed through the remains of the cogitator nave and into an ammunition store blackened by earlier fire. Crates lay split open. Shells rolled across the floor, some spent, some live, some cracked and sweating propellant. Dead smugglers had burned here, their bodies reduced to black shapes against the walls, arms raised in permanent supplication to a mercy never offered. A severed executioner helm lay beside a Carcharodon knife, both half buried in ash. Koromar slammed Castigar into a stack of munition crates. The impact split rotten wood and spilled bolt shells around their boots. Castigar drove his axe pommel into Koromar's abdomen wound. Blood burst from the armor seam. Koromar's chain blade rose and came down. Castigar caught the blade in his left gauntlet. The dead fingers did not close properly. The chain teeth tore through the crushed hand, chewing what remained of the palm into red fragments. Castigar roared at last, not in fear, not even in pain, in anger that the body dared fail before the oath did. He wrenched the blade aside and buried the power axe in Koromar. The strike entered at the left shoulder. It came out near the opposite hip. The power field flared as it cut, opening ceramite, black carapace, ribs, muscle and organs in a diagonal wound that would have ended any mortal life before the body knew it had been struck. Blood steamed from Koromar in sheets. His armor's damage runes became a storm of red. The Carcharodon staggered back, torso nearly opened in two, one hand pressed briefly to the ruin as if confirming the wound existed. Castigar pulled the axe free. "Fall," he said. Koromar did not. His armor locked. Musculature clamps seized around torn fiber bundles. Emergency systems flooded his body with coagulants and stimulants. His secondary heart hammered against the damage, like a fist against a sealed door. He stood upright by mechanical violence and will. His voice remained calm. "You stand with oathbreakers." Castigar's answer came through a helm full of blood mist. "I stand with my oath." Koromar attacked again. The fight drove them from the ammunition store into the collapsed chapel of stolen saints. The chapel of illicit saints was no longer a chapel. It was a grinding pit of broken statues, snapped aquilus, shattered reliquaries, and powdered bone. The mirrored Emperor face had been smashed earlier, and its fragments glittered under the blood like ice. Castigar slipped on a human ribcage and nearly fell. Coromar struck him across the helm with the chainblade, but the weapon's motor finally died mid-blow, its teeth locking in place with a wet metal cough. Coromar used it anyway. He hammered the dead weapon into Castigar's helm like a club. The first strike cracked the right lens. The second drove the helm grill inward against Castigar's mouth, breaking more teeth. The third would have caved the faceplate entirely, but Castigar caught the weapon haft beneath his arm and twisted with everything left in him. The chain blade snapped. At the same moment, his axe haft broke under Coromar's counterpressure. The power axe head fell away, field flickering, blade still hot. The haft remained in Castigar's grip as a useless length of cracked metal. For a heartbeat, both warriors stood with broken weapons. Then Castigar drew his combat knife. Coromar kept the dead chain blade stump. They met again amid the stolen saints and battered each other through the last symbols of false faith. Coromar drove Castigar backward through a saint statue, breaking it across his spine. Castigar stabbed under Coro. Mar's arm, once, twice, 3 times, each strike finding seal, flesh, bleeding darkness. Coromar smashed the chainblade stump into Castigar's helm until the executioner's vision became static and red light. Castigar hooked his knife behind Coromar's knee and tore, forcing him down. Coromar dragged him down with him. They rolled through ash made from human bodies. Dust storms poured through ruptured ceilings above. Reactor heat turned the air into a furnace. The dead were changing around them. Human corpses became black smears or pale ash shadows against the floor. Gun servitors slumped and fused to their mounts. Astartes' bodies remained longer, blackened statues locked in the poses of murder, gauntlets around throats, knives in ribs, helms split open, limbs severed, but still held near weapons. The base collapsed in stages. A wall fell somewhere behind them. The floor opened in another chamber. Hot wind roared upward through cracks. Every breath inside damaged helms became fire dragged over wet meat. The duel moved into the dust-filled hangar throat, where the first dead smugglers still lay crushed into the rockcrete. Here the storm had entered fully. Yellow-brown dust howled through the breached roof and mixed with black smoke from below. The landing bay was a graveyard of haulers, ammo pallets, dead gunmen, and the first corpses of the massacre. The heavy bolter gallery, where a Carcharodon had once kept firing after being cut in half, loomed above them in silhouette. The western barricades, where executioners had butchered the garrison, were reduced to melted scrap. Every step took them through old blood made mud by ash. Castigar stumbled. Coromar struck him from the side and drove him into a support pillar. Castigar's knife went up beneath the Carcharodon's gorget. The blade entered. Coromar's body spasmed once around the wound. Blood poured down over Castigar's hand. The Carcharodon seized Castigar's breastplate with both gauntlets and squeezed. The crushed chestplate shrieked. Castigar felt his ribs break inward. The oath chain around his side snapped. His flooded lung collapsed fully. His hearts beat against armor that had become a closing fist. He drove the knife deeper, angling for the throat, the spine, anything that would end the grey monster before his own chest became pulp. Coromar leaned forward. His shattered helm struck Castigar's helm once. Both faceplates cracked further. He struck again. Glass burst inward. Bone broke beneath ceramite. Castigar's vision vanished. The third headbutt broke both helms. They fell together into the dust, still gripping each other. Castigar's knife remained buried beneath Coromar's gorget. Coromar's gauntlets remained locked in Castigar's crushed breastplate. Their broken helms pressed together among ash, blood, and shell casings, as if each refused to let even death create distance. For a long time, nothing moved except the storm. Then a gauntlet twitched in the dark. Grey or gunmetal, the dust hid it. The fingers scraped once against the floor. Then the reactor beneath Corcyran Secundus finally died. The lower levels went black. Lieutenant Severian Holt ordered the third servo skull into the dark, and watched it drift ahead like a dead child's prayer. Its suspensor field whined beneath the weight of dust. Its brass eye rotated, clicked, focused, unfocused, then bled a trembling image back to the wrist slate locked over Holt's sleeve. The feed came in poor and grainy, stained by interference from the dead machinery below. Rockcrete corridors became grey shadows. Broken pipes looked like bones. Heat ghosts flickered where there should have been no heat left at all. The engineer beside him muttered to the machine spirit in clicking Binharik. His voice trembled despite the iron cage of his throat. Signal degradation increasing, Lieutenant. Auspex returns remain unreliable. The lower levels are saturated with mineral scatter, thermal bloom, and residual shield distortion. Holt did not look away from the picked feed. Keep the skull moving. My lord, the machine spirit resists. Then command it harder. The engineer made a soft, offended sound, but obeyed. The skull drifted through a torn blast door and into the first of the final chambers. The armsmen behind Holt saw the image on their own slave displays and fell silent. No one spoke for several breaths. The chamber beyond had once been a transit gallery. Now it was a crypt made by hands that had refused to stop killing even after flesh should have failed. Carcharodons and executioners lay everywhere, grey and gunmetal giants half buried beneath dust, collapsed metal and one another. Some had died apart. Most had not. They were locked together in death with the same intimacy as drowning men, as lovers, as beasts caught in a trap too cruel to release either. One pair had fused into a single blackened mass where reactor fire had washed over them. Their armor had melted together across the chest, shoulder and helm, grey ceramite running into gunmetal plate until chapter colors vanished beneath the glassy burn. Holt could still see the shape of one gauntlet buried in the other warrior's throat. He could see the opposing blade driven up beneath the ribs. Fire had joined what hatred had already bound. Another pair lay beneath a fallen beam. A sword ran through both bodies. It entered the back of the first warrior and emerged through the breastplate of the second, pinning them chest to chest. Both had hands around the hilt. Both had wounds that could have been the killing stroke. There was no telling who had driven the blade home. There was no telling whether either had known. The armsman nearest Holt whispered, "Throne, preserve us." No one rebuked him. The servo skull glided lower. Its light passed across another corpse, a Carcharodon with both legs missing, dragged into the center of a corpse pit by the trail he had left behind. Across from him lay an executioner whose thigh armor had been opened at the seal. The floor between them was dark with blood so old it had cracked like lacquer. The dead warrior's boot rested on the Carcharodon's crushed breastplate, as if the final act of his life had been to stamp the enemy into the floor and die facing him. Holt felt his mouth go dry. He had fought men. He had sentenced deserters. He had watched void crews scream in silence beyond cracked glass. He had seen bodies in numbers so large they became landscape. This was different. This was not death, as men understood death. This was will remaining after the body had become an argument against it. "Mark all remains," he said. A rating beside him fumbled with his slate. "All of them, sir?" Holt turned his head slowly. The man swallowed. "Yes, sir." They moved forward. The patrol line entered the transit gallery in pairs, boots slipping on dust, old blood and flakes of burnt ceramite. Their lumen beams trembled despite training. They passed beneath hanging cables that swayed though there was no wind here. The air tasted scorched through their rebreathers. Somewhere deeper, metal shifted with a long, low complaint. Holt stepped over a severed gauntlet, still clutching a knife. The gauntlet twitched. One of the armsmen cried out and raised his shotgun. "Hold!" Holt snapped. The gauntlet moved again, not with life, but with the dying spasm of some damaged armor actuator finally releasing after days of lock. The fingers opened. A blade clattered to the floor. No one laughed. They found the skull helm in the next chamber. It rested beneath a collapsed arch, half buried in ash and broken parchment. One lens was dead. The other flickered faintly when the engine seer approached, as though the machine spirit within it resented being discovered. The helm was blackened gunmetal, shaped in the severe image of a death mask. A crack ran from brow to jaw. Dried blood filled the mouth grill from within. The engine seer knelt. A chaplain variant, Lieutenant. Executioners. Significant damage. Memory core may retain fragments. Recover it. The engine seer extended a tool probe. The helm sparked. He hissed a prayer to the Omnissiah and connected the core to Holt's wrist slate. At first, there was only static. Then a voice emerged. It was not fully a voice anymore. It came in broken pieces, half drowned beneath distortion, but the tone beneath it had iron in it. Names followed one another through the crackle. Some were clear, some were mangled, some broke apart before Holt could hear them whole. Vaughan, Othran, Garan, Malrek, Damas, Prasad, Jorad, Kael, Halvek, Orsus, Routh, Selen, Arkul. The recording shuddered. More names came, but not all of them belonged to executioners. Holt heard fragments of descriptions. Grey warrior in the throat. Void blood recovered. Silent one beneath the false saints. Enemy worthy. Enemy. Unnamed. Debt witnessed. He looked at the broken helm for a long moment. They recorded the enemy, he said softly. The senior armsman looked at him. Sir? Holt adjusted the gain. The recording dissolved into static again, then briefly returned with the sound of wet laughter and a final command that was too ruined to trust. Count them yourself. The feed died. The engine seer withdrew the probe. Core failure. Holt still stared at the helm. The executioners had hated them, hunted them. But near the end, amid the furnace dark and broken machinery, someone had marked even the grey dead as worthy of a place in the tally. Holt did not know whether that was honor or madness. In the Imperium, the two words often stood closer than any priest would admit. Bag it, he said. They found the apothecary's arm not far beyond. It lay beneath a fallen relay pillar, severed above the elbow, the grey plate scorched nearly black. The Narthesium was still locked around the forearm, its blades extended, drill heads snapped, needles bent. Dried tissue clung to the tools. The fingers were closed around nothing, but they had closed with such force that the inner gauntlet joints had deformed. 3 progenoid canisters lay nearby, cracked, empty. Holt crouched beside them. The engine seer angled a lumen beam over the seals. Were they opened? Holt asked. Difficult to determine. The casings are damaged. Some fractures are from heat, some from impact. These locks were engaged, then broken. Whether before or after the battle's end cannot be confirmed. Could someone have recovered the gene seed? Possible. Could it have been destroyed? Also possible. Holt exhaled slowly through his rebreather. Possible. Unconfirmed. Unknown. Words beloved by men who survived inquiries. The Carcharodon Apothecary, if that was what he had been, had died reaching for preservation. Whether he had succeeded would remain buried with the rest of the truth. Holt wondered how many chapter vaults, how many dead lineages, how many future wars might hinge on such small sealed organs carried through hell by warriors who no longer had faces. A rating behind him retched. The rebreather caught it badly. The man choked, staggered, and tore at his mask until another armsman grabbed his wrists. "Do not break seal," the senior armsman barked. "Breathe through it. Breathe, damn you." The rating gagged again. Vomit bubbled behind the mask. He swallowed convulsively and began shaking. Another man started praying. Not loudly, not dramatically. Just the same 4 words again and again beneath his breath. The Emperor protects. The Emperor protects. The Emperor protects. Holt almost told him to stop. He did not. They passed into the hangar throat. Here the massacre gathered itself into one final image. The roof had split open above, admitting a column of dust-stained light. The storm outside had softened, but the wind still moved through the broken hangar with a dry whisper, carrying ash across the dead. Cargo haulers lay overturned and burned. Human remains were pressed into the rockcrete in red-grey smears. Heavy bolter casings lay in drifts. Broken antenna spars jutted from the floor like iron reeds. The air held the smell of old blood, burnt lubricant, and something sweeter that Holt refused to name. At the center of the chamber lay the remains of two giants. One was Executioner. His armor had been split, crushed, cut, and burned until it looked less worn than excavated from violence. The breastplate was caved inward by immense pressure. The left gauntlet was ruined, fingers missing, wrist seal torn open by teeth or blade. The side plates had been bound with oath chain, now snapped and embedded in dried blood. The helm was broken across the face, lenses shattered inward, mouth grill collapsed. The engine seer approached cautiously and passed a reader over the armor's chest. For a moment, nothing answered. Then a rune flickered. Castigar, the Taker. The name died immediately after. The engine seer tried again. The armor remained silent. Internal record almost completely destroyed, he said. Name confirmation lasted less than a breath. Holt looked at the corpse. Castigar, the Taker. A name that meant nothing to him that morning and would haunt him for the rest of his life. The dead warrior's right hand still gripped a combat knife. Its blade was buried beneath the gorget of the body tangled with him. The second corpse was Carcharodon, or so Holt believed. Identification was nearly impossible. The helm was shattered beyond heraldry. The chest markings were burned and crushed. Grey plate remained in places, beneath soot and dried blood. The body had been opened from shoulder to hip by a wound so deep Holt could see where armor, rib, and black carapace had been cleaved almost into two separate halves. Even so, the Carcharodon's hands were locked into Castigar's breastplate, fingers buried in the broken ceramite as though he had tried to crush the executioner's hearts with his last strength. "Can we separate them?" Holt asked. The senior armsman looked at the gauntlets, then at the fused, interlocked armor. "Not without cutting tools, heavy ones. Do not attempt it." The armsman seemed relieved. Holt stared down at them, knife in throat, hands in chest, broken helms pressed together. They had fallen facing one another, not as comrades, not as enemies who had found understanding, but as weapons that had continued their purpose until the hand holding them ceased to exist. One of the younger ratings dropped to his knees. His shotgun clattered beside him. He tried to speak a prayer, but it came out as a thin animal sound. He rocked back on his heels, staring at the dead Astartes, eyes huge behind his mask. "These are the Emperor's angels," he said. No one answered. Holt thought of the sermons. Angels of death, defenders of mankind, the mailed fists of the Imperium, the shield against the alien, the heretic, the mutant, the demon. Here they looked like warnings. Dead gods who had turned an entire base into a charnel house because duty, oath, data, suspicion, and old violence had given them no other language. Holt had spent his career believing space marines were distant and terrible because they were necessary. Looking at Castigar and the ruined Carcharodon, he wondered what became of an empire when necessity looked like this. "Lieutenant," the engine seer said. Holt turned away with effort. The final servo skull had found a descent wound beyond the hangar throat, an opening torn through collapsed engine floors and into the buried vault below. Its signal came back weak, distorted by heat ghosts and dead metal. Holt almost ordered it recalled. Instead he said, "Send it down." The skull sank into the earth. Its picked feed turned red, then black, then grainy green. It passed through broken levels of ancient machinery, melted conduits, cracked cogitator stacks, bodies half buried beneath fallen logic columns. It drifted past a chamber where data scrolls had burned into curled flakes across the floor. It descended into the Cogitator Cathedral. Holt saw the false signal engine, or what remained of it. A central logic column split open from within. Brass rings warped and snapped. Crystal cores burst. Cables hung like torn arteries. The remains of an aquila lay in two pieces at the base of the machine, blackened but visible. Around it were fragments of parchment, old imperial script, clearance seals, threat identifiers, convoy route projections, and burnt authentication plates. The engine seer leaned closer to the display. "Imperial construction," he whispered. Holt's blood seemed to cool. The servo skull's Auspex probe scanned a fragment of surviving data slate fused into the floor. Lines of corrupted code shivered across Holt's wrist display. Most were unreadable. Some resolved for half a second at a time. Valid Imperial asset, hostile priority, clearance conflict, interception required, denial protocol, multiple Adeptus Astartes identifiers. The engine seer made the sign of the cog over his chest. "Lieutenant, this suggests the machine may have generated conflicting engagement markers. It may have drawn them." "Record everything," Holt said. "I am attempting." The skull drifted closer. The image sharpened. For one perfect moment, Holt saw enough to understand the shape of it. A dead Imperial machine, blind and obedient, calling loyal monsters and oath-bound renegades into the same grave because its decayed protocols could no longer tell judgment from error. Then the ceiling fell. A slab of black metal dropped across the pict feed. The servo skull vanished in a burst of white static. The wrist slate shrieked and went dark. The engine seer stared at the dead display. Machine spirit extinguished. Transmission? Partial. Incomplete. Data loss severe. How severe? The engine seer did not answer at once. Holt understood before he spoke. "Enough to suggest," the engine seer said. "Not enough to prove." "Of course." Holt closed his eyes. "Of course." They withdrew at dusk, though the sky above Corcyra Secundus never truly changed color. It only shifted from yellow ash to brown shadow. Holt ordered the site sealed. Warning beacons were placed around the canyon. Naval quarantine markers were keyed to his authority. No salvage, no entry, no unauthorized transmission. The dead Astartes remained where they had fallen, because moving them would require authority no patrol lieutenant possessed, and courage no sane mortal desired. As the cutter lifted from the ruin, Holt looked down through the rear pict screen. The smuggler base sank back into dust. The hangar wounds faded. The canyon swallowed the signs of battle. From above, Corcyra Secundus became once more what it had always pretended to be: worthless. The report reached orbit within the hour. It passed from cutter to patrol vessel, from patrol vessel to relay station, from relay station into encrypted channels, already burdened with casualty lists, convoy losses, chapter dispositions, and deniable orders from the Badab War. Holt's name went with it. So did the fragments. Executioners dead. Carcharodons dead. No confirmed survivors. Possible internal defense system. Possible corrupted data engine. Possible imperial origin. Evidence incomplete. In a sealed chamber aboard an unnamed naval command ship, officers read the report and spoke softly. Then the redaction began. Names were locked behind access seals. Picked captures were cut. The false engine data was marked unstable. The suggestion of imperial causation was removed from all but the deepest file. The matter was designated strategically negligible, politically sensitive, and unsuitable for dissemination during active theater operations. Too many oaths had already broken in the Badab War. Too many chapters had already killed beneath banners no mortal clerk could safely judge. No authority wanted another truth. The official record would call it a lost tale. The dead would keep the rest. The archive did not call it a massacre at first. In the first sealed transmission, it was recorded as an engagement of uncertain origin upon Corcyra Secundus, involving unidentified Adeptus Astartes elements, extensive structural destruction, and total loss of all observed combatants. The words were chosen by a naval adjutant who had not walked the dust-choked halls, had not seen grey hands locked in gunmetal armor, had not watched servo's skull light crawl across faces split open inside sacred helms. To the archive, words were armor. To the men who had entered the base, words were bandages laid across a severed throat. Lieutenant Severian Holt's testimony began with procedure and ended as confession. He stated that his patrol cutter descended under adverse atmospheric conditions. He stated that Auspec's performance was degraded by mineral interference, ash suspension, residual shield static, and unknown subterranean emissions. He stated that the installation appeared to be an illicit void route facility, formerly occupied by smuggler personnel of uncertain affiliation. He stated that the human remains were too damaged for meaningful identification. Then, as if some lesser discipline in him broke, he wrote that men had been pressed into the floors, not slain, not shot, not burned, pressed. He wrote that the mortal dead had not been treated as enemies by the warriors who passed through them, but as loose debris beneath the tread of gods. He wrote that some had died still clutching weapons, some had died surrendering, and some had died simply because they stood where ceramite boots needed to fall. He wrote that the dead Astartes showed injuries inconsistent with withdrawal, mercy, restraint, or sane continuation of combat. He wrote that some had no limbs and remained positioned as if fighting. Some had no helms and no faces, and yet held knives in broken hands. Some had wounds so catastrophic that mortal biology had no language for how long they must have continued moving afterward. His superiors would later remove those lines. The helm fragments spoke less clearly than the lieutenant. A Carcharodon feed recovered from a broken faceplate gave only color and impact. Static, heat, a grey blur of blade movement. The last visible image before failure showed an executioner advancing through smoke with a shattered shield held before him, shells bursting across its surface. A voice murmured in high Gothic through the recording, low and almost lost beneath damage alarms. Enemy denial primary, data denial secondary, withdrawal denied, red work continues. Then the feed ended in a collision of black, red and white. Another fragment contained no imagery at all, only breathing, slow, controlled, then heavier, then wet. After that, the sound of a blade being dragged across armor, followed by the scrape of fingers against stone. The transcript servitor assigned to the fragment marked it as insufficiently informative. A red-robed magos later amended the note, observing that the breathing continued for longer than expected after multiple catastrophic wound indicators. The magos added a devotional marginalium praising the resilience of the Emperor's post-human design. That line remained. Death Speaker Arkel's corrupted name roll was reviewed by 3 separate scribes, one naval, one administratum, and one attached to an inquisitorial delegation whose names were not included in the archive. Each transcription differed. The data was half broken, half screamed through static, half smothered beneath reactor interference and helm trauma. Names emerged from the ruin like bones from mud. Vaughn, Othran, Garin, Malrek, Damas, Prasad, Jorad, Kael, Halvek, Orsus, Routh, Selen, Arkul. After those came other references. Grey warrior beneath the throat, silent one beneath false saints, void blood, enemy worthy, enemy unnamed, debt witnessed. The final audible words were damaged, but all 3 scribes agreed on their shape. Count them yourself, Taker. The administratum scribe suggested the phrase indicated command transfer. The naval scribe suggested ritual closure. The inquisitorial notation stated that speculation was unnecessary. The file was sealed. The Carcharodons did not request the bodies. No formal petition arrived. No honor guard descended. No hymn of retrieval crossed the void. Their strike cruiser remained in high anchor until the dust storms shifted, until the patrol cutter rose, until quarantine beacons began their lonely blink around the canyon ruin. Then the blackened ship transmitted one narrow beam on an archaic cipher band no naval officer aboard Holt's vessel could fully pass. A senior Void brother received the casualty confirmation in a chamber without statues. The names were not spoken as lamentation, they were carved. A serf, hands flayed clean of tremor by training and fear, etched each loss into a dark internal memory plate beneath the gaze of armored brothers whose faces were hidden behind helms. Koromar's rune was marked uncertain, not because survival was suspected, but because the corpse had not been retrieved and the armor record was ruined. Harvester Sava's name was cut with the sign of recovery incomplete. Brothers whose gene seed was unconfirmed received the deeper mark, the one made with a hooked blade and no second pass. The Void brother who oversaw the rite gave no speech. When the final cut was made, he placed one gauntlet against the memory plate and said only that the tithe had been paid in red, in silence, and in service to the Void Father. The strike cruiser turned from Corcyran Secundus and returned to darkness. The executioners received the news later, and in pieces. The Badab War did not pause to carry grief cleanly through its channels. Messages arrived damaged by battle, intercepted relays, astropathic strain, and the endless hunger of the maelstroms surrounding Void. First came a report of lost contact, then a report of chapter dead discovered by naval patrol, then a sealed scrap bearing the name Castigar, identified through a dying armor rune, then fragments from Arkul's helm, enough for the Death Speakers to take up the tally and bind it into chapter memory. They did not mourn Castigar as a victim. They named him an axe that broke against a worthy foe. That mattered. An axe that broke upon soft bone was poorly forged. An axe that broke against stone had met its measure. In the halls of the executioners, where skulls hung in shadow and old chains carried the weight of old wars, Castigar's absence became a harder thing than a recovered relic would have been. His head was not returned. His armor was not restored to a reliquary. His weapon did not hang above a chapel gate. The lack became the relic. The missing body became the proof that he had not yielded it cheaply. Death Speakers recited that he had stood in the dust of Corcyran Secundus and counted until the counting passed to him. Whether that was true in the exact manner of the archive was irrelevant to them. Truth was not always a clerk's possession. Sometimes it was a blade shaped by the dead. The wider war continued. Convoys burned in the void without ever knowing that Corcyran Secundus had existed. Loyalist vessels hunted secessionist supply routes through radiation fog and broken moonfields. Secessionist ships ran dark beneath false codes and prayed their oaths would carry them farther than their fuel. Boarding torpedoes crossed the black between ships and made small hells inside steel corridors. Lance strikes opened cruiser bellies and spilled men into vacuum by the thousand. Planetary populations starved behind blockade lines, while admirals argued clearance authority and chapter masters weighed honor against survival. In the Maelstrom Zone, billions of human lives bent beneath a war they could not understand. Dock serfs died loading shells that would be fired by ships whose names they never learned. Agri-workers watched their tithe grain rot behind interdiction screens, while children went hollow-eyed beside empty shrines. Penal battalions were shipped toward fronts that changed allegiance before they arrived. Astropaths burned out carrying orders that were rescinded by the time they reached their recipients. Administratum clerks stamped supply denials over pleas for medicine, fuel, seed, ammunition, evacuation, mercy. No one told them of the dead beneath Corcyra. No preacher mounted a pulpit to speak of the Carcharodons and executioners locked together in the dust. No memorial bell rang for the smugglers crushed beneath ceramite boots. No official slate named the false signal engine as cause, culprit, or warning. The war was too large to notice one grave, and the Imperium too old to confess that many of its graves were dug by its own hands. That was the truth Holt wrote in his private note. The note was not part of the formal report. though it was found attached to his sealed testimony in a personal cipher, weak enough that the inquisitorial censor broke it in moments. Holt wrote without ornament. He wrote like a man trying to place a thought somewhere before duty killed it. He wrote that the dead space marines had looked less like warriors than warnings. He wrote that mankind prayed to be protected by beings that had forgotten how to be human by design, by right, by necessity, and by choice. He wrote that the Carcharodons appeared loyal beyond question, yet that loyalty had manifested as silence, annihilation, and the erasure of all living witnesses. He wrote that the executioners appeared honor-bound beyond doubt, yet that honor had carried them into alliance, defiance, and mutual slaughter without any mortal power able to halt them. He wrote that both forces had been monstrous, and that the horror was not that they had betrayed their natures. The horror was that they had fulfilled them. He asked what became of mankind when its defenders were this cruel, this powerful, this certain, and this willing to butcher their own reflection. He asked whether the Imperium survived because of such beings, or merely postponed its death through their atrocities. He did not ask for forgiveness. The censor suppressed the note. The final inquisitorial judgment was brief. No strategic relevance requiring further dissemination. No confirmed survivor testimony from Adeptus Astartes sources. No actionable evidence of deliberate third-party manipulation. Potential evidence of corrupted imperial signal architecture judged incomplete and operationally hazardous. Maintain chapter relations where possible. Preserve ambiguity. Restrict mortal access to Corcyran Secundus site. Archive under sealed Badab war irregularities. Further inquiry not recommended. A wax seal bearing the rosette closed the matter. The file entered darkness. In later summaries, the incident became a lost tale. A footnote for those permitted to study the ugliest corners of the Badab war. A story of a sub-company of Carcharodons and a sub-company of executioners meeting in the dust wastes and killing one another to the last. No victor, no confirmed survivors. Bodies recovered with wounds that should have felled even the Emperor's angels many times over. Evidence of extreme close-quarter combat. Cause disputed. Records incomplete. The archive preferred incomplete records. Incomplete records did not accuse. Years passed over Corcyran Secundus. The quarantine beacons failed one by one, their machine spirits starving in the dust. The canyon filled with storm drift. The exposed hangar roofs vanished beneath yellow-brown ash. The Vox Spire's stump became a rusted fang half buried in the waste. The buried vault settled deeper as heat bled away and dead machinery cooled at last. No smugglers returned. Superstition did what naval order could not. Void rats whispered that the place was cursed by grey ghosts and headsmen dead. Pirate captains altered routes rather than cross its orbital shadow. Even scavengers left it alone. The planet remained strategically worthless. The dead kept it anyway. When the storms thinned, fragments surfaced. A strip of grey ceramite etched with shark teeth. A gunmetal pauldron plate with yellow markings burned almost black. A broken axe tooth, half buried in glassed sand. A combat blade fused into a lump of melted armor. A helm split through the visor, its chapter mark erased by heat, its lenses filled with dust. Then the wind would rise again and cover them. Beneath the buried base, in corridors no mortal entered, the last poses endured. Hands locked in breastplates, knives lodged beneath gorgets, dead warriors fused together by fire, pressure, and refusal. No chant reached them. No chapter serf cleaned their armor. No apothecary recovered what remained. No death speaker finished the tally. No void brother carved the final certainty. They remained as they had fallen, not reconciled, not forgiven, not victorious, only dead. In the sealed silence below the dust, the Imperium's great truth lay written without ink, scripture, or proclamation. Loyal monsters had met oath-bound monsters in a grave dug by dead law, and neither had been capable of becoming anything else. The Carcharodons had carried out judgment. The executioners had answered debt. Both had been brave. Both had been cruel. Both had been faithful to their own darkness. That was why no one survived. No victor was recorded at Corcyran Massacre. No survivor asked forgiveness. In the dust beneath the dead stars, the angels of death proved only one truth. There is no peace amongst the stars, only war.